I don't get a lot of opportunities to use the gavel. That was fun. You might be here for select board meeting. You might be here for the finance committee meeting. Either way, you're correct. You're in the right place. Wait, there's a Zoom thing. Okay, now we're okay. Okay. I was just about to announce the start of the select board meeting because it's time. We were going to schedule to start at 6, and we have a quorum of 4 of us here, which is enough people to have a quorum. So I'll call this select board meeting to order and kick it over to Christy to consider opening the finance committee.
I call the finance committee meeting to order.
I'm going to turn this almost entirely over to John and his capable staff. I'll say we're not structured at this meeting to have public comment, but if you're in the public and you have questions, send them in. You can send them to the manager. If they're manager-type questions, you can send them to the select board or the finance committee. We're here to listen. This is a time for us to learn. And it's over to you, John.
Okay, well, thank you. So this is the budget workshop, and we're excited to be here. This is a night where I try to, as town manager, I want to give an overview and be here to field questions, but this is really a night to hear from all the professionals that run this organization. And this is a great opportunity for you to meet people you haven't met and interact with some of the great people that we have working throughout the organization, and we look forward to doing that. The order that we'll be going in for these presentations from each department will follow the table of contents, which is on page 3 of the budget book. There's a few programming notes of changes. The only change that I can remember right now is land use is only partially represented tonight. And so we'll finish that tomorrow. My goal is to get through Council on Aging and potentially police, depending how things go, because we have tomorrow night to come back and do this again. So we're certainly will take as much time as needed and add a third night if we have to, because we want to make sure that you all have the information that you need and get the answers to the questions that you have. I would also, speaking of questions, I would also note that we did provide, and we'll publish in the extra information folder for this meeting, answers to several pages of questions from the Finance Committee, which are really helpful and show different aspects of the budget that individual members were interested in. And we'll also highlight some of these questions today during the presentations from each of the departments. Are there any questions or concerns about this layout before I get started? Okay. And we do have remote folks. I'm going to just make sure everybody's a panelist that needs to be. Okay, good. So I wanted to just read a few remarks. The budget was first presented on December 18th, and that followed a capital presentation which occurred earlier in December. The recommended FY25 budget is reflective of the goals of the Select Board and is responsive to the needs of the community. It's a level services budget, which is defined as the funding required for maintaining current levels of service and activity, plus increases for contractual and mandated obligations. Over the last few years in budget presentations and at budget workshops like this, we've provided information about challenges we've had meeting service level expectations with the continuing strains on our revenues. Our population and its needs are growing, and we're experiencing increase in service expectations from our residents. There are urgent needs related to climate change. There's demand for improving safety on our roadways, and our parks and our streets, and there's a need to build a new public works facility, and there's dozens of projects, major projects in our 10-year capital plan. Additionally, we have goals that we try to address in our budget that are set annually by the Select Board. The Select Board goals are shown in the budget document on one of the pages in the book. But throughout this, we have fixed costs, and these fixed costs are straining our budget capacity. We've seen increases to 29%, 15.6% from our Minuteman School district assessment. That's an increase that is nowhere near the 2.5% that we get every year in new revenue. And so as we get double-digit increases year over year, that strains the rest of the budget and requires us to make hard decisions and find ways to fund the things that we need to do and work around those large increases that we can't control. Other examples of that are health insurance and pension costs, which are both increasing year over year at a rate much higher than 2.5% to 3% that we can anticipate getting for revenue. So as a result, we've had to defer capital, we've had to defer staffing, and we've done so, and I think we've done it effectively and continue to deliver services that meet the needs of the community. It gets more challenging every year. And so I just wanted to raise that to everyone's attention. So the total budget spending in the town manager's level services budget is $42.5 million. Of that, $1.75 million is capital. And there's also funding set aside for subsidies in the range of $540,000. We've taken several measures to reduce the budget this year and efficiency measures to try to get, even though it's a budget that's an increase larger than you've seen in the past, we still did several things to try to get the budget lower. For example, we introduced a new program where we're proposing to offset retiree health insurance costs from using our health insurance trust, our other post-employment benefits trust that was set up for this. That's a proposal. We're also using funds from a mitigation account to cover major capital expenses that we would have to fund otherwise. We're working with the employees to try to identify ways to reduce our health insurance plans, hopefully maybe in time for FY25. That's the goal. We've taken several measures to prioritize the capital plan and find a way to do a reasonable amount of the projects that were proposed. We'll be looking at cost sharing with the DPW fuel station. We've also done several reorganizations. You'll hear a little bit about a few of the reorganizations here tonight. But the reason that we do that is that it allows us to take the existing staffing and the existing resources and realign them in ways that will better serve the public. The way that this organization was structured over the last several years was based on the way the services were needed then, and we continue to evolve to meet the growing and emerging needs of the community, and we're doing that without just adding new people. We're changing roles, we're moving things around, and we're doing the best we can to try to keep costs down and also meet the needs of the community. We're doing several other things that I'd point out and are listed on page 12 of the budget book to try to reduce the costs of the budgets. And I think before we go to the department presentations, I also just wanted to mention that as part of the budget presentation, we were also asked to prepare an estimate of what it would cost to reduce to a 3% budget. There's information about that on page 16 of the budget book. And essentially, we'd cut $2.8 million from the budget, and we'd do that by reducing capital investment, reducing operating, and reducing our subsidies. And those changes would have significant impacts on services that the community relies on and that I think all of us are proud to offer. So those would be difficult decisions that we would have to make, but we're prepared to do whatever's necessary to help bring a balanced budget to town meeting this year. So there's also, hopefully there's time, and you'll hear a lot about different projects that we're doing, but in this budget, we're investing in priorities. I mentioned select board goals and addressing climate change. We're doing all that with this budget. And I encourage you to review the details that are provided in the budget book and ask any questions that you have about those. So I'd like to kick off our department presentations by inviting the Director of Administration and Finance, Mary Ann Fleckner, and she's going to introduce the Finance Administration team and begin our budget presentations. So, Mary Ann?
I'm just going to interrupt for a second. Please sit down. As I settle into up here, I'm taking in who's out there in the audience, and I just want to appreciate the staff for being here and for all that you do every day to make this a great town. So thanks for being here.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Mary Ann Fleckner, Director of Administration and Finance. I am joined by my Human Resources and Finance colleagues tonight. To my left, behind me, is Mary Beth Zabak, HR Manager, Kat Stryker, HR Officer, and to my right is Ellie Anderson, Financial Solutions Analyst, CJ Carroll, Principal Assessor, Joanne Norton, Town Accountant, and Teresa O'Leary, Treasurer Collector. You'll be hearing from some of them a little bit further on. So we will go through the finance and HR budgets, and we'll entertain questions in the end, as maybe some of your questions will be addressed in our presentation. We will begin on page 29 with the Finance Director's budget. So you can just turn to page 29. Okay. So on that note, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit more. I want to thank my colleagues and acknowledge all members of the Finance Department for the FINDER's budget. And as you may know, the Finance Department experienced turnover last year, and we lost much institutional knowledge. This new team, though, gathered, researched, and submitted all DOR required documents. Balance sheet, about 75 pages. Schedule A, about 32 pages. The ACFR, which is the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, 117 pages. The tax recap, about 20 pages. All of these reports are of the utmost importance and required, as these documents allow us to certify our free cash with DOR and certify our tax rate, which we submitted and received slightly earlier than in previous years. Also, what was unique this year was the shortened time period to create the fiscal year 25 budget, which Town Manager John Mangiarotti summarizes on page 10 of the municipal operating budget. In just 12 working days, October 18th through November 6th, we worked under John's direction and worked with every division and department head to create the fiscal year 25 level services budget. The changes that you'll see in fiscal year 25 under the FINDER's budget: postage and courier increased by 33.33% to reflect actual spending. Unemployment insurance increased by 6,100% to reflect actual spending. This could go down, but trending around this amount right now. All health insurance lines increased by 22.8% to reflect the health insurance trust premium increase vote. Specifically, the health insurance Harvard Pilgrim Health Plan line item increased by 44.87% because the dispatch health insurance was carved out, assuming the regionalization, but this brings it back into the FINDER's budget. Short-term interest, the town increased by 820.35%. We took the approach of taking bands, which are bonding anticipation notes, which are short-term notes, they're 1 year. And from research and talking with experts in the investment field, we feel this is the best approach to take at this time, anticipating that interest rates will be decreasing going forward from the 7% that is used in the capital investment presentation budget. Going to page 32, the human resources budget. Some highlights there. Recruiting has become more challenging with smaller candidate pools, but we continue to aggressively recruit and hire top-notch candidates. We successfully transitioned almost 300 retirees over from Blue Cross Blue Shield in Tufts to Aetna in an extremely short period of time. 18 working days. This became effective last Monday, January 1st. We still are entertaining many calls from retirees, but it is going fairly well. We also continue to provide excellent employee recognition and wellness events, mostly at no cost. Changes that you'll see in the fiscal year 25 HR budget: professional salaries increased by 61.66% because HR will be funding the HR officer position instead of finance. That's Kat Stryker. Professional services increased 10% because of rising healthcare costs. And all other line items, you'll see employee recognition, office supplies, other supplies, books and periodicals, and materials and equipment have all decreased. At this time, I'm going to invite C.J. Carroll, Principal Assessor, to introduce and speak about the assessor's budget that begins on page 35.
Thank you, Mary Ann. My name's C.J. Carroll, the Principal Assessor here in Acton. I don't believe I've met everyone, but it is good to meet you all tonight. I've been here about 7 months now, holding this position. The rest of the department includes Marty, our clerk, as well as Brian, the property lister. Just to go over the items on the budget outside of personnel, it includes the real estate CAMA software, as well as a personal property database and account inspections on that personal property. A multiple listing service subscription to analyze sales, contract work to help with interim year certification year value adjustments. Fiscal year 2026 will be a certification year, and it is a significantly more demanding task at the state level, and has an estimated cost of $75,000. 37.5 of which will be in fiscal 2025. So that is the reason for the increase on that line. Professional development is another increase. That is to fund courses to work towards and maintain certifications within the department. It also pays for the dues to the Massachusetts Assessors Association. The goal of the Assessor's Office is to assess all real and personal property at full and fair cash value. This results in fair and equitable taxation. This includes maintaining a database of all parcels in town, analyzing and inspecting all sales in town, and using this information to inform values. We process abatements and exemptions of all types, and of course, we assist residents and taxpayers with anything they may need. It is our duty, we see it as our duty, to ensure that those who need assistance are provided with every resource that may help. Marty in our office goes above and beyond to make sure that those resources are always provided. Beyond regularly meeting with residents to discuss their personal situation and determine how we can help, she'll actually travel to people who may have a hard time getting to town hall or may have a reputation for forgetting to get their paperwork in on time. This afternoon, Marty and I were at the COA presenting to seniors about their property tax, how it's calculated, and what we can do to help if they're struggling to pay. Another crucial function of the Assessor's Office is to collect all new and previously unassessed property to be added to the tax levy as growth for the year. Brian thoroughly and precisely inspects all new construction, building permits, and previously exempt property to guarantee all new growth that we know of is collected and contributed to the levy in the year that it can be applied. Along with these items come strict guidelines from the Department of Revenue that must be followed in order to receive our annual certification and to set a tax rate. This brings us to the capital request in my plan for cyclical data collection funding. The Department of Revenue has minimum certification requirements, one of which is that each property be inspected at least once every 10 years in order to obtain a tax rate. This project will cost $160,000, with half being completed in fiscal 2025 and half in fiscal 2026. In the future, we would like this process to be completed 10% annually, funded as part of the annual operating budget, rather than as one large project in the year prior to the due date to avoid future capital requests like this one. The good news regarding this particular topic is that we're already doing more with less than compared to surrounding communities. I called some really great assessors in surrounding towns who are doing what they need to be doing, and our staffing and contracting needs align with towns of 5,000 to 7,000 parcels. The fact that we're able to complete this work with over 9,200 parcels, as shown on page 33 in the budget book, can be attributed to stellar staff and efficient processes that are in place. These will only continue to improve as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we'll be hearing from Joanne Norton. To my direct left,
To your
our
left.
town accountant.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Good evening. My name is Joanne Norton, and I'm the town accountant. I've been with the town for 10 years and became the town accountant in May of 2023. My accounting team consists of Kristen Cowett, Jennifer Ashenbaugh, and our newest member, Kathy Hun. Some of the work we perform are we assist the town manager with the annual budget process. We set up the new funds and budgets as needed. We coordinate the external audits. We prepare and submit the DOR reports, such as the Schedule A and the balance sheet. We prepare the W-2s and 1099s. We submit quarterly payroll reports to the IRS and the Mass DOR. We prepare the biweekly accounts payable and payroll warrant. We reconcile the cash and accounts receivable to the town treasurer and collector's books. And as well as we process the town and Acton Public School retiree benefits. My budget is on page 37 of the budget book. Okay, salaries have a net increase of 4.42%. We did some shifting between the clerical and the professional salaries. Our travel, dues and membership, as well as office space, office supplies remain the same. I've added a professional development line of $3,500 to my budget this year. This is to pay for the Mass Municipal Auditors and Accountants Annual Education Program and for 3 staff members. This is a 3-year program with the goal to become a designated municipal accountant. Thank you. Next.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Next is Teresa O'Leary, and she is our treasurer collector, and her budget begins on page 39.
Good evening. I'm Teresa O'Leary, the Treasurer Collector, and as Mary Ann said, my budget starts on page 39. My department consists of myself, an Assistant Collector, Jashira Gonzalez, and Brandy Rando. Together, we have over 15 years of experience here with the town of Acton. The main tasks of the Treasurer Collector's office are to provide exceptional customer service, ensure accurate and timely processing of over 75,000 bills, to process more than 5 million in local receipts received from other departments, to manage the cash flow for biweekly warrant funding, and to issue and manage debt, details of the debt which is on page 25 of the budget book. For fiscal '25, we had a professional salaries line increase, and that was due to a reorg. I also, as Joanne did, added $2,500 per professional development to reflect the necessary coursework to obtain and maintain the treasurer and collector certifications that some of us hold. Our 25 goals are to continue to explore ways to increase our efficiencies by utilizing bank bill pay check automation, to improve customer-facing payment options, to promote the use of the remit lockbox, and to continue to foster bank relationships to access the best interest rates while we can, while maintaining safety and liquidity. And I'm going to turn it back over to Mary Ann if you have any questions.
Thank you. And one last closing remark is that that you had heard from a couple of folks talking about professional development training, and hope that you're able to support that. Succession planning is key to an organization. And also wanted to just do a special acknowledgement to Ellie Anderson, who was the lead under John's direction to develop this budget book tonight, working with all division department heads. Thank you.
So are there questions or comments or concerns for administration and finance?
Hi, I have a question. Thanks. I'm actually curious how much we have currently in tax title. And I wonder if the collector treasurer has that general amount, maybe not specific.
That's something that we were just talking about, Teresa and I, and she is back.
Yeah, I actually just shared a spreadsheet, and it was a couple of weeks ago when it came up before. We have we have a very high tax rate, so it's very few parcels that we perfect the liens on. My guess is it's under $1 million.
Okay, okay,
But it's really small. I'll look it up, the email that I sent, and correct myself if I'm wrong.
okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. You have some wonderful answers in the questions we asked. I was hoping you could touch a little on how benefits costs have changed over time. Just kind of get to a higher level of what you're seeing. We all know healthcare has gone up. How competitive are we with the towns surrounding us? How is that driving benefits, et cetera?
Benefits.
Benefits, yeah.
Yep, I could take that. So that question was excellent, timely, because not only the health insurance, but also, as John mentioned, there are fixed costs. And whether that is the Middlesex County Retirement Assessment, the OPEB that we have to contribute to that is for the best of everyone, but overall benefit costs beyond just health insurance and pension, is there other insurances like life insurance, dental, eye, benefits that we need to ensure that are competitive. All of those other benefits are 100% paid by the employee. But on that same note, looking to my HR staff, we really have to maximize that and advertise it and use it, because we need to be able to recruit top-notch folks and also offer benefits that at times, if you asked me 5 years ago and someone said, hey, do you have pet insurance? I would say no, but we now have it. So those are constantly trending benefits that we need to stay on top of. In addition to others that we're very competitive with, and we have an HSA with our health insurance, and the town contributes half because it's required by an HSA, health savings account, that's attached to our high deductible plan. And other things like a 457, which some folks, if you're in private industry, that's equal to your 401k plan. But again, it's 100% paid by the employee.
I know that we've unfortunately lost sounds wrong. We've had retirements of some of the long-term employees, and I've been very impressed, the more people I meet, town employees, how many of them have been here for quite a long time. Do you have any idea how we're looking at retention at this point?
Sure. So what we look at and we try to stay on top of is that there's two pieces. There are mandatory retirements in public safety. Someone who turns age 65, we do a succession plan when we're getting 2-3 years close to a police officer, firefighter. For retention purposes, it does go to let me back up for 1 second. I just attended a webinar yesterday, and it was things that are trending in human resources for retention. What is key to the current population? And it is career development, training, motivational pieces, not necessarily cost-wise, but in order to retain your staff, you need to have a succession plan in order to retain them, because they also want to know, where's my next step in my career? If I don't see something here, I probably will go someplace else. There are going to be, and there have been times where we can't compete with a larger city. An example of that is our fire department. We're 40, we're not 300. We don't have a division of inspectional services. That's going to happen naturally, and we not encourage that, but we understand that. And we see people move on for the right reasons. So the retention goes back to the acknowledgement of training and mentoring and ensuring that communication lines are always open.
And I would just add, that, through our collective bargaining, we have made improvements to compensation to be more competitive, and it's in many cases, at the better end of contracts compared to other communities, because we need to try to keep people here. And that's one thing we've done. And another big change that we've implemented, it's been on a temporary basis, but I think it's here to stay, is hybrid working. Almost everyone we interview for positions mentions that. And so it's clearly working to getting people interested in the opportunities that we have here, because not every community offers it. And the private sector isn't offering as much as they were 2 years ago. So I think things like that set us apart from other communities, and we'll continue to find ways to do things like that.
Given the size of the health insurance increases, may sound like a nitpick, but the MedX retirees did not go up 22%, 22.8%. And you seem to have to apply that number across the board, so it may be slightly overstated.
That is correct. Not knowing what plan design is going to look like in '25, it is a placeholder, but you're right, is that hopefully will not be needed.
And if I could, I have a question for CJ. I know that the assessed value of a business property can depend not so much on its transactional value, but its income generated. Are we seeing reports of businesses in town that are, seem to be a lot of restaurants closing? Are we going to be impacted on our commercial tax base by the profitability of the businesses in town?
So there's a couple interesting points on that. The first is, and I don't have the exact number, it's in my classification hearing presentation, but we did see an increase in commercial property values, which is really great for 2022 sales, which is what was reflected in these most recent values. The other piece that's interesting, speaking from a personal property perspective, is you're right, we saw a trend, particularly in 2021. There was actually a dip in parcel count due to the amount of businesses and their personal property accounts that closed. So it's really hard to say what is happening, but that trend did not continue beyond a year or two after COVID.
Okay.
And the commercial value and commercial and industrial value increase is promising.
Good. Thank you.
CJ, before you go, could you, since we have a public forum, talk a little about how people get abatements? I know you said you talked to the Council on Aging.
Abatements, exemptions, or both?
All of the above.
Let's do it all. All right. So abatements, that is when you'd like to contest your property value. If you look at your tax bill and your property record card, which I encourage everyone to do, and you feel that your new assessed value isn't right for one reason or another, it could be an error in public record. It could simply be that our sales analysis didn't quite touch your property the way it should have. If you disagree with that, you should either go onto our website, fill out an abatement application, or come and talk to us and we'll help you do so. That can only be done while these Q3 tax bills are out. Once the due date ends, we no longer have jurisdiction over that value, and the board cannot vote to change it. So anyone who wants to do that, don't wait. Another big piece is exemptions. So the town of Acton is probably one of the best in the state in terms of offering exemptions to folks who need help with their taxes. I wish I had, and I do not have, our pamphlet, but it is on our webpage, and we always have a stack of them at our counter at Town Hall. But anyone from disabled veterans to elderly to the blind, if you receive a circuit breaker income tax return on your Massachusetts state income tax, or even just in general, if you're having a really hard time right now. The assessor's office is here to help, and the Board of Assessors is fantastic at hearing people's cases and trying to get something to work for somebody. So if anyone out here has is having trouble right now, come talk to us. There might be something that we could do to help.
Hi, CJ. I'm wondering if you can just tell us what the comparison is between Acton's percentage of contested valuations versus other communities, and if there's been any change over time, like are we getting more accurate or less?
That's interesting. I don't know that metric. We can try to find that out, given, parcel count versus how many abatements that we get. I'd be surprised if it were above or below a comparable community. I think we're pretty standard. And I think that cases that move on to the appellate tax board is also probably fairly standard for comparable communities.
I see that Jason has his hand up.
Thank you. I do see on page 29 the organizational chart. I also do see the response to the questions that were submitted in advance, that the finance department has 1.88 FTE. And is this also the operations budget as well?
No.
If so, okay. The finance department has 1.88 FTE open. Which positions on the org chart is that, and how long have those positions been open, held open, empty?
So the 1.88 is the finance director position, and also 2 part-time positions, non-benefited part-time positions.
And the finance director position became empty when Steve retired, right?
Correct, yes, that was 1 year ago, correct.
And the other 2 positions, the other 2 half positions, how long have they been open?
So as Joanne just announced, so as of the writing, it was open. We just filled that position about a week ago. She started about a week ago. The other position has been open for approximately 2-3 months.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's another CJ question, I guess. I know we're mostly focused tonight on expenses, but you've got this important revenue part in your portfolio. So I was really happy to see the 90% increase in, abatements that are offered, because from my point of view, the abatement program the exemption programs are a key policy point that we have in Acton to retain people here who live here, which creates a better social fabric, and it's better from a financial point of view as well. But I may be looking at this too optimistically. Maybe it's because we have a 90% increase because taxes have gone up so much. So I guess I would be curious about your perspective, looking back at the records. I know you weren't here, but what are the main factors that you see in that big increase?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I can't speak from personal experience. I can only speak from assumptions. But the first would be likely just communication of these programs. The more we get out there, the more we actually go to the Council on Aging, the more that we do the little things like put something in the Senior Center's newsletter. One person hears, they tell their friends may need help as well. And I really do think that just snowballs and gets to more and more people exponentially, and it grows. I also think that more people have gotten to know the faces in the assessor's office. So, Brian, my predecessor, is very well respected, loved by all of these residents. And Marty is somebody that they trust. They can go to her and actually meet with her in a room and tell her things that maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable telling others. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
My question's for Mary Ann, actually. Given the absence of a crystal ball, okay, Okay, if the budget you presented this year increased by no more than 3% year over year for the next 5 years, do you feel that it would sustainably run your departments?
That's a loaded question.
The point I'm getting at is, are we real tight in a way that isn't sustainable because we're trying to keep things, the override potential as low as possible? And
So I can help with that one. I think, as mentioned in the budget presentation, to get to a 3% revenue model for this year, it would require us to cut 2.8 million. And so to what extent that would impact administration and finance, we haven't done that analysis yet, and I'd rather not. I think it's clearly going to result in reducing staffing. And we would reduce staffing in the way that's the least amount of harm to the organization, so.
I definitely don't mean a 3% this year. I mean, if
Okay.
the budget you're asking for was funded appropriately.
Oh, that's a different, I'm
That's
sorry.
what I meant.
Okay.
Sorry, not down to 3% this year.
I can.
Going
Yeah.
forward, is that a sustainable number?
Okay, so if funded appropriately, is it sustainable? I think overall, yes. I would say the factors that John mentioned at the beginning in his introduction is with the fixed costs, and like, for example, the health insurance, is that those are such large increases that, again, it doesn't, like, you can't say that it's not going to affect anything else. And so that would be like just that one caveat, but I think just overall, I think to the vendor's budget, yes.
Thank you.
Just fire, you can just fire away. We'll stop you if there's too many questions going on.
You presented us with a nice list of the FTEs per department to get an overview. Is now a good time to talk about it? Just sort of roll it all together? Or do you want to hold that towards the end after we've talked about all the departments?
You're referring to vacant positions?
Yes.
I'm happy to talk about that right now. Want me to go over the whole thing, or you have a question?
That'd be great if you could.
So, one of the questions that was in the advances from Finance Committee members was a list of the current vacant positions and the budgeted salary amounts. So, we did some analysis, and as of the time that we did it, which was within the last few days, or last week or so, we had approximately 21 FTEs vacant, unfilled. And that's across all departments. Finance, as discussed, is 1.8. The fire department has currently 5 people vacant. We had someone just retire and, et cetera, for why that is the case. Health and Human Services has 2.3 FTEs, and that's not just two people, that's several people, because there's a lot of part-time people in there. DPW has more than 2 vacancies right now. Operations has more than 1. Library has more than 3. Police has 4. And dispatch has 1. So all in all, if you take all those positions that I just referenced from those different departments, and the question was, what's the budgeted salary amount for those positions in FY '25? The answer to that question is approximately 1.5 million.
Now, you have listed here that these have been open, some of them since March, I think is the farthest back we're seeing. But I believe some of these positions haven't been filled for years. Is that the case, or is it that you've just moved people around? I know every year we have positions that haven't been filled.
Yeah, I think some areas that we've had trouble attracting candidates are in nursing. The per diem nursing staff has been hard to get restored since COVID. Most of the other positions, we hire them and then someone else retires. And so there's a new vacancy in police, for example. Police and fire, DPW, library, we did a bunch of hiring last year and then people moved on a little bit. So we have vacancies again. So most of them are not long-time vacancies. I guess the longest one, I think the nurses are the ones that's been vacant the longest.
Because every year you say you have vacancies that you've held back on, haven't filled in part to leave some room in the budget for things that come up. But it sounds like that's different vacancies every year. It's not that there's one position that's been.
Yep, as we bring excellent people in, people leave, and then there's a vacant position, and then we find more excellent people. But it's a constant cycle. So what we gave you is a snapshot. As mentioned, a couple of these positions have already been filled. One of them we're interviewing for tomorrow. So that, that's literally a snapshot, and it could change. It'll change next week if you ask again.
Thank you.
I have a question that I think is generally related to HR. It was question 8. There was, I don't know who asked this, whether it was Finance Committee or Select Board, but have you done a thorough examination of staffing needs in view of declining metrics? And the answer, maybe I didn't understand the question, it doesn't appear that the question was answered, because to me, I read the question not as a request for justification of the added positions in the budget, but rather just asking generally, has the analysis been done yet in this budget process about the possibility of more reorganization to shift responsibilities to different positions, or looking at positions, but also programs that were created long ago and maybe aren't relevant to the services and the organization today. So I'm wondering if either one of you could speak to that.
Yeah, thank you. And I tried to address this in my opening remarks. We do analyze staffing levels constantly. That's one of my primary jobs, is to look at what we're spending on staffing and determine whether it makes sense to do it the same way, which is why we've done several things to change how we staff. And so that's an always ongoing analysis. The reason why I said, or that we said staffing is reflective of Select Board priorities are, there have been the last few years directives from the Select Board to add staffing in certain areas. And that's what I was referring to. But generally, all of the staffing needs are analyzed and reviewed, and I'm not in a position at this point to discontinue programs as suggested without getting direction from the board to do that.
If I can add one piece, is that what's great, that John will come to myself and Kat and Mary Beth and say, hey, this opening, what do you think that if this division is doing this and this is similar, why don't we take a look at this? So he's constantly trying to think about the creative ways to look at those staffing needs, not just within that one department, but just townwide.
Right, and that's been very clear to me since I've been on the board. So I guess then the answer is yes. It's not just done during this budget process, it's just ongoing. So thank you for that.
What level, what process of feedback do you have for the Select Board when they give you directives specifically for things that require hiring? You have more of an overview of the business of running the town.
Well, I get to participate in the goal-setting workshop in varying levels each year. I think the last few years I was an active participant. And I try to provide feedback on the goals that are being discussed and how implementing it would happen in the budget constraints that we have. I think generally, you could make an argument to add staffing in every department, and the folks behind me will probably will work on that tonight. So it's not a matter of where we need staffing, it's a matter of what the policymakers believe is a priority, and that's where we focus our resources.
I hear you. However, there's a disconnect in what I'm hearing here. Their job is to hear what people want and direct you to figure out how to make that happen. You know the underlying numbers on what it takes to make that happen. This could become a wonderful feedback loop of constantly adding new services. At what point is there that meeting of reality? Is that in the goal-setting workshop where you say, okay, but that means we'd have to not do this other thing, or we'd have to cut back on this? It's a little to what Alyssa was talking about are we constantly adding services? It sounds like you are reanalyzing what
So
we have.
that's what the budget process is. So I do my best to interpret what I believe to be the goals of the board and how to put that into a budget. I present it to the board and the finance committee, and both bodies give feedback and say, we really think that doesn't make sense, and here's why, or we really want you to invest more in stormwater, which is what happened last night, and things like that. And if the board were to say, we need you to reduce your budget by a certain amount, then I would do that and try to continue services in a way that's still reflective of those priorities, but with less resources. So the budget process is where that direction and that feedback happens. And if the board and the finance committee don't agree with the budget, they will push back and say no. So that's the process.
And is there ever a public process of sort of reconciliation looking at current services provided? Just as a ridiculous example, say we had a horse and buggy department. We clearly don't need that at this point in time. Is there a periodic review?
So I think that we look at the way that we do things and we make sure that it's the most effective and efficient. You know, an example that you'll hear from our building commissioner in a few minutes is that up until this summer, we were still taking paper applications and writing them all out, which is, I could equate to horse and buggies. And we're now not doing that. And so that may allow us to not have as many staff sitting at desks filling out those applications. So we do that incrementally, but in terms of saying, we don't need this department or this service anymore, unless it's some sort of mandate or a regulatory issue. It's not something that's gonna, it would have to come from the select board.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because it isn't anything I've seen the select board ever do, is sort of an overview look at what we're offering. It's not part of the standard doing business, but in a time like this where we're having to really focus on, do we have to cut things, and how do we continue with whatever level of override can happen? How do we continue without needing another one as soon as possible? And we've got these extreme increase in fixed costs. We need to make sure, obviously, that we're focused. And I think ideally for the public to understand where that's all happening will make all of this much easier.
I think we're ready to move on to our next budget group. So thank you, Mary Ann, and thank you to the team. Can we give them a round of applause? Is that appropriate? And I would like to now welcome the operations team, which is led by Mark Hald.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Mark Hall, the Operations Director. With me on my left is Matt Frost, the Technology Officer, and Kristen Alexander, the GIS Officer. The Operations team includes information technology, GIS, applications, customer service, and public facilities. And these budgets appear on page 46. IT implements and supports all the systems, applications, and equipment of all of our departments and services to the public. We support all forms of communication, including public safety radio, telephone, and email. We propose a level service budget, but the key changes here are in the MIS line, which shows an increase due to adding the OpenGov system that John just talked about, and as well as upgrading the Assessor's system, a long-needed upgrade, and we also moved it to be a cloud-based system. We also increased in equipment maintenance due to additional equipment added at the North Acton Fire Station, additional Zoom room equipment, as well as some telephone equipment. So that's the IT budget, and I'm going to ask Matt to talk about the public facilities budget.
So the public facilities budget is primarily used to maintain and upkeep all of the town's public buildings. We are also proposing a level services budget within the public facilities budget. There are a few increases. The first is in equipment repair. This change is a result of simply shuffling several smaller line items around and consolidating just for ease of maintenance of the budget. We also see a slight increase under water. That's primarily just due to additional buildings needing water, as well as, changes in water rates. A final, or actually two more, we saw an increase in trash removal costs, so that's reflected here. And we also proposed a $70,000 increase in building improvements in order to fund some smaller projects that were captured within the recent facility study, and just to kind of keep some of these smaller projects going during the normal course of doing business.
With that, we'll take any questions.
Just wonder if you could expound a little bit on the trash removal. I assume that's probably technology related. Is that true, or?
So the trash removal is in the facilities budget. It is primarily caused by an increase in the charge per ton of waste disposed.
So Mark, help me out. Is this a merger of the IT department and the old municipal properties department?
Effectively, that's what it is. It's combining two departments that have traditionally worked hand in hand ever since I've started here. So it makes some sense to have projects initiated and completed by one unified department.
Just for us old timers, you see so many of these budgets, you just get certain departments in your head, and this was new to me.
Yes.
So I've only been on the other side of the municipal setting since October. I now work in the town of Wayland. One thing that I've noticed that is their IT department is very hardware, their network, they know what they know, but they don't have, like, programming is not, something that is in their skill set. And some of the operations that we do benefit highly from some script writing. Is that something you have in your wheelhouse for efficiency purposes? I'm asking because my husband wrote a quick script, and that script cut my OpenGov interaction by 80% on our end. So it's worth, right?
Is he available?
I'll share the script.
I would love for,
You can't afford him, but I'll share the script. He's pro bono on this one. But my point is, there are a lot of things, a lot of steps that I see that we do that are very manual and labor intensive, and a lot of data entry that if somebody with a little know-how just looks at it, can be solved by a quick script.
I would love for Kristen to comment on that, who's been deeply involved in some of that.
Okay.
Yes, I know exactly the script you're talking about, I believe, and we have a GIS consultant, AppGeo, and
Okay.
they wrote that script for us, so we do use our GIS consultant to write scripts for us.
Okay, so you do have somebody who's kind of looking at that and finding efficiencies in that way.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Jump in anytime.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Mark. My question is, are you doing more now in the cloud versus storing data on site? And what are the costs associated with that versus maintaining our own servers, et cetera? Have you looked at going to more of a cloud application versus us storing the data?
I would say that just about any public-facing system like OpenGov, anything that we put out new would be cloud-based. We started with cloud-based stuff with Munis itself, which is our largest software package by far. That's cloud-based, not super public-facing, but the expense that the town would spend would be in labor and maintaining the system and doing updates and managing the hardware if there were failures, and with it in the cloud as Munis, for example, and OpenGov, we don't have to deal with any of those software updates or hardware problems anymore. So yes, it does mean a higher expense and on an annual basis per system, but it saves us internally from year to year.
Thank you.
Nope, thank you all.
So our next presentation will be one member of the Land Use Department, Ed Mullen, our Building Commissioner.
Good evening, Honorable Select Board and Finance Committee. My name is Ed Mullen. I'm the Building Commissioner overseeing the Building Division staffed with 2 full-time and 4 part-time employees, with 1 position funded through an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Littleton. I've been with the town since early April of last year. I would like to thank those in the Land Use Department and Fire Department for providing service when I came on board and assisting with complex issues and inspections. For instance, Planning Division often has conditions on their special permits which need additional inspections, and they were always willing to help. The Health Division often assists when the housing code intertwines with the building code. I would additionally like to thank Kristen Gouchard, Planning Director, for spearheading the implementation of OpenGov, our online permitting software. I would like to thank the sustainability staff for assisting with and providing training for the implementation of our new specialized energy conservation code, which took effect January 1st, and soon to be implemented fossil fuel-free bylaw. OpenGov. OpenGov has streamlined permitting and inspections significantly. Application review time has been reduced to less than half of what most permits being issued in less than 14 business days. Prior to this, permits would take much longer, and I chased a lot of paper. The Building Division Administrative Assistant has recently been hired over at the Acton Police Department as their new business manager. The Building Division would like to take this time to congratulate Noelia Mejia on the promotion. However, this has created a vacant FTE position. Now into the numbers. You can see an increase of 29.73% for clerical services on page, I think it's 51. This is a reorganization of staff. It is not a new position. And at this time, and in consultation with the town manager's office, we are considering a staffing reduction with the current vacancy, and we are looking at other ways to potentially fund some inspection projects outside of the budget. In the budget, a line was added for protective clothing. This is to meet state guidelines for OSHA compliance. However, we reduced the uniform line, which only reflects a small increase. The line item for books may be reduced in FY24 or FY25, depending on when the state promulgates the 10th edition of the State Building Code, which was set for January 1st of this year. The Building Division's revolving fund pays for the IMA with Littleton for the shared electrical inspector. It also pays a part-time local building inspector, fuel reimbursement, digitizing and scanning documents, additional training for staff in the new codes and code books. We updated our mission statement to be more reflective of our approach at the building department with the energy code. We try to use an education approach instead of an enforcement approach. I like to say we walk softly because we carry a big code book. A little side note, the building inspectors now use a Ford Fusion hybrid and a Hyundai electric vehicle for inspections, as we turned in a gas-powered Ford Explorer a few months back. Thank you.
Question, but are there going to be workshops for the lay people about the new code and deciphering it?
There will be, and I have to say, sustainability, working with both the building and planning division have been helpful in There's some great resources already out. We're working on getting them on our page, but they are up on the sustainability page now. Once we lost the admin, I've been playing with how to get it uploaded on our page, but it'll be there. There's some great resources, and we will be providing some additional information and training. So,
With the new changes to the code, do you envision that this will have any impact on the rate of construction in town and the cost and subsequent, how will that impact our new growth numbers in the years to come?
that's a great question. This time of year, we always see a decline regardless of new codes, just because of the time of year that it is. But in conversations with other building departments in other cities, especially the 9 other communities that are participating in the specialized code and the fossil fuel-free bylaw, I think we will see a decrease, but I think it's mostly because of the learning curve. Acton's a great place to live, a great place to build, and I think that, in the short term, we might feel it a little bit, but long term, once the process is understood, I'm hopeful that it'll pick up again.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for all the permitting metrics you've given us. It gives a really good overview of how things have been heading. Thank you.
So, do we need to take a break or we keep going? Okay, we'll keep going, all right. So, we'll next hear from the director of our libraries, Maria Palacio.
Good evening, everyone. Our budget can be found on pages 66 and 67. I'm here today with our Assistant Director, Carrie Darcy, if you don't know her, and Mary Cadis is our Office Manager, and she's passed out the infographic that you have. We can talk about that toward the end of my presentation. So last year, when I came to talk to this group, we talked about some of the challenges that we have overcome and some that we still struggle with. We continue to work on necessary library technology infrastructure upgrades. Our staffing levels continue to be well below comparable libraries of our size and service hours. We struggle to balance our outward community presence with the needs of covering our service desks. And not having ample community study and meeting room space to meet the town's changing needs. Those are some of our major struggles at this time. But I'm happy to report the following wins and challenges. So in 2023, we hired a head of material services, a children's librarian, a head of patron services, and we hired and/or promoted 5 patron services assistants. We also promoted the head of information services in December of 2022. A challenge is that we had a couple of department heads leave for other opportunities outside of our community. Librarians with master's degrees in library information science are in demand. Also, another challenge that we had was on August 12th, 2023, the AML had a First Amendment audit. If you're not familiar with those, they can be pretty traumatic experiences. The experience was really difficult for some of our visitors in the library on that day and for staff, and then the aftermath was especially difficult for staff and for library operations. The town was super supportive and helped us work through that, and we've gotten training after that and before that, so we will be ready, but nevertheless, that is unnerving. But a win is that we refreshed a large part of the adult fiction and nonfiction collections at AML, and we're working through the children and teen collections at this time. We want people to have all kinds of resources and books on the shelves, but we also want to make sure that they have the most current information available to them, and that it's easy to grab a book off the shelf and that a bunch of them don't fall on your head. So that's what we're trying to avoid. We also ordered 11 new public computers, and we're working with our IT department as part of that larger technology infrastructure to get those installed. We're working with, as I said, our IT to upgrade our time management and copy scanning solution so that we can bring something that we don't have right now, which is wireless printing, to Acton residents. So that'll be awesome when it happens. We are actively working on that now. We're also working on our 2024-2029 Acton Library Strategic Plan. And we expect to have that work completed and approved by July 1st of this year. We do continue to experience challenges with our internal resources, which is a great way to say staffing. We're currently at about 18 FTE, and we're open 64 hours per week at AML and 28 hours per week at Citizens. We continue to see lots of teens frequent the library to study and work on group projects. And in fact, just yesterday, the mom of the president of the Outreach Club, someone that we partner with, this young person, I haven't even met him yet in person, but we partner with him all the time on all of the initiatives that the Outreach Club is doing. So the mom came up to me in the lobby yesterday and she congratulated me for all the work we've done to engage teens and to help them feel more welcome. She said that in the past, teens did not feel wanted at AML and they would go to Concord instead. Obviously, we want to keep them at our library, and we're happy that they're there every night. We have requested the addition of a teen librarian to help us engage with teens via programs, collections, and through our new teen advisory group that is led by Carrie. The AML, of course, the last update or refresh of the AML was in 1998, and so we do need and want that, but the challenge will be funding, of course, to get that to happen. And one thing that we're super excited about as we work through the different numbers is that our circulation numbers have surpassed pre-pandemic levels. So we're very excited about that. We continue to work toward providing all Acton residents and visitors the best customer service and access to resources available to us with the support of the town, the support of our Friends of the Acton Libraries, our foundation, and the Minuteman Library Network. So what you have in front of you, except for Jason, I think who's online, or maybe he's here now, is an infographic that we put together to show you the value that our libraries brought to Acton residents and visitors in fiscal year 2023. It is two-sided, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you so much for your time.
I'll start with one. Just first of all, appreciation. We've gotten to spend some time together because you've been committed to helping out with the Citizens Library, and I just really appreciate that. Along those lines, it looks like your title has changed, but it hasn't quite changed everywhere. Director of Acton Libraries now instead of Director of Acton Memorial Library, or how are we thinking about your title these days?
Well, I was initially hired to be the director of the Acton Memorial Library in June of 2022, but I was told that there was a small library in town that used to be like a private or independent library, and that it was going to join the larger library. So as we started through all the work with Citizens, which is a lovely little library in West Acton, and that we really like going to, and it has amazing new books. It's not filled with anything dusty or not, relevant. So as we've worked through this process that you're alluding to, Jim, I did start to change my signature to Director of Acton Libraries or Town of Acton Libraries, because we do have two libraries, and how lucky are we?
Thanks. Yeah, it would probably be good to, next time we update the template, be good to change the template from Memorial Library Director to Director of Acton Libraries.
And your business cards too, yeah. I think, and just for a little bit of further clarification on that, when the previous library director moved on, we had an interim library director at Memorial, and at the same time, the West Acton library director retired, and as the town manager, I was responsible for supervising both the Memorial Library Director and the West Acton Library Manager, in addition to 20-plus other direct reports. And I wasn't able to give that individual, Jennifer, who you all probably know, Jennifer Friedman, I couldn't give her the support that I think she needed on a day-to-day basis, which is why, as Maria arrived, it was the perfect timing to have that person report to Maria. That person, we don't have a person in that position right now, which is a longer conversation. But that is, I believe, the way that this should move forward, to help the professional library director help oversee the libraries instead of me.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the wonderful statistics you have here also. I really like having metrics to have an idea of what's going on. One thing I would love for you to talk about, since we're in a public forum, is the cost of getting electronic books versus taking a book out of the library. Because my understanding is a book in the library, you buy it once, and you have it for as long as you keep it, versus you pay for a certain number of uses of an ebook.
So I would like Carrie Darcy, our Assistant Director, to talk more about that, but that's a great point and question that you're asking. Thanks.
So for context, public libraries have always benefited from copyright law, which never took into consideration digital technologies. And so when ebooks became a thing, publishers found a way to make up what the money they felt they were losing from public libraries by increasing the cost of their electronic books. That model has always been to the detriment of the consumer. And if you're aware of library news, this has been addressed both at the national and state level. The state is currently working on some consumer protection legislation in hopes to kind of bring down the cost. But there are a variety of different models, so it's hard to give you a real concrete answer. What I can tell you is the models that we do operate in. One is cost per circulation, and so we pay per circulation. And so the more books that are circulating, the more we pay on those models. And within that, one product that uses that is Hoopla. And within that, depending on the books themselves, there are different pricing levels. So one book could cost us up to $1 to circ, and then some other books could cost us up to about $5. And that generally depends on the popularity of the book. Those, unfortunately, those pricing are set by the publishers. And it has been a 20-year difficulty in sort of trying to figure out how to continue to support the growing public demand for ebooks with the limited resources we have in material budgets. And that's not just Acton, that's a national library challenge. And so I think the struggle we have had is that post-COVID, there has been a growing interest and demand and usage in our electronic resources, and so it's trying to find the delicate balance between providing enough content and material to our digital users as we do to our print users. And we're almost getting to a point where circulation is 50-50. Half of what we're circulating is physical, and probably about 60-40-ish is the breakdown right now. I'd have to get you specifics on that, but it's a growing community, especially as our community is becoming more comfortable using technology. But it is a challenge, and there's not one specific number, unfortunately, that I can give.
What sort of limitations or controls can you put on that? My mother said that her library in New York now limits the number of holds you can put. I know that for books I'm reading, sometimes I'll be done, but I'll forget to return it, and it auto checks out. Again, are there things like that we could put a limit on? Because my understanding is you pay for the whole, if the book renews, you pay for a whole new book effectively. I mean, it's whatever the charge is.
So that varies from product to product. We can do things like that with our streaming products, and that we would limit, those are our cost per circ. So we can restrict the number of circulation that a patron can have in a various month, and those are ongoing conversations that we have been having right now. And so it's just a matter of, I think, because the digital usage has historically been such a smaller part of our circulation, it has been unlimited, and that number is increasingly going up month over month. And so we're looking to see what is going to be the best number that we can cap at that isn't actually hurting residents.
Yeah, it's just, as a user, it's so easy for it to not even think about it and have it be incurring.
Well, and the other thing to know on the streaming products, if you're streaming a TV show, every episode is a circulation. So it's hard if you're, it's not a comparable, it's not an apples to apples, unfortunately, model.
And along those lines, the books circulated chart on here, I presume, is paper books.
Yes, on the back side, you do get to see the ebooks and audiobooks. However, that does not take into consideration the streaming platforms.
Okay. Are you getting a lot of use of the streaming?
Yes.
Yes, it's picking up.
Yeah. And that's where we can maybe cut some costs and reduce by putting those caps on the number of checkouts a patron can have in a given month.
Yeah, I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Can I just add on real quick, do audiobooks also cost more?
Yes. Digital audiobooks, typically when we buy them, it could be about $20 to $30. Depending on the audiobook, if we're buying it digitally, it can be upwards of $100. And again, this is, we're kind of getting raked over the coals by the publishers, and the big five really control that set pricing.
I think it's on page 65, the annual memorial of visitors is the one metric that does not seem to be recovering from pre-COVID levels. First, how do you count the visitors? Meaning, I hope you don't count every time I bring my grandchildren in to use the bathroom from playing on the playground.
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. So we actually have we just moved over to an electronic people counter by a company called Sensors. And that's how we track the patron count, the visitor count right now at both AML and at the Citizens Library. We did have a people counter, I think it was right over the door. And you're right, the number of people coming in has not reached pre-pandemic levels. And our concern was like compared to circulation, like when is that going to come up? So I think that we can probably attribute the fact that people don't come in as often because they're downloading, they're checking out digitally. I mean, our website, what I say is that our website is our 24/7 library, and that's probably what is happening. But we are seeing more people come in to programs, more families come in, more teens come in. So just maybe that's changed a little bit, but you are correct in that observation. Oh, and virtual reference, of course, we have something called, it's like what we're not calling it Ask a Librarian, but it's a feature where people can get online and ask us a question, and as librarians, we'll answer them.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
Thank you both, all three of you, all 18 of you. Well, I'm sure there's more than 18 because some of those are part-time. I'm really impressed with that FTE number considering how many people are served in how many different ways. I wonder if you recall what number we are in the Commonwealth for circulation, because I've heard it before, not in the budget book, but I've heard either we're like 15th in the state for the number of visitors or the number of items circulated. Like it's much, much higher than one might expect. Sorry to put you on the spot with data you might not have brought.
It's okay. We fall within, I think prior to COVID, we were in the top 5 for our size, comparable across the state. So we serve not a rural sized population, but a small population of under 25,000. And within that subset group, we were in the top 5. I think post-COVID, we're a little bit under that. But again, this is the first year that our circulation has gotten to where it was pre-COVID. And so I attribute the drop in ranking to that.
Now that we've brought the West Acton Citizens Library under the directorship, the joint directorship, and kind of moved away from a volunteer model and added access to the Minuteman Library System, have we seen a result? Have we seen uptick in people at the West Acton Citizens Library?
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll let Carrie chime in too, because we kind of tag team off of each other this way. So the West Acton Citizens Library has attendance has grown. More visitors are coming, not in like droves, but we are seeing more people come in. Some of the things that we're doing to kind of entice more people to come in is to offer limited programming there. That building is not ADA accessible, so we are offering story times there every week. And just last week, we got a report that they had 5 children and their 5 grown-ups, which is the most they've had since we started doing story times there, I want to say like since the summer. So it's not, we don't get anywhere nearly as many people as, say, AML, or even as many as maybe other libraries that have branches, such as like Concord, that has the Fowler branch, but we are working actively towards getting more people to come in. And right now we have a sandwich board in the middle of town, like in West Acton, like promoting our program. So maybe that was what we can attribute the most recent attendance. But we're kind of at a point where, you know, if we build it, they will come. A lot of people just really don't know that the library's out there. And so we're hoping to find out more information on how to get more people in there through our strategic planning process and our surveys, which hopefully you all filled out. Thanks.
Another piece of that is that there was a time a few years ago when people would try to go to the Citizens Library and it was closed because, you know, the librarian had to leave the building for a while. Now that you're staffing this, you know, with, you know, librarians who are switching back and forth as needed from the Memorial Library to the Citizens Library, it's open all the time when you say it's going to be open, and that really helps people show up. It's very discouraging to show up and have the library be closed, and that was turning people away.
That's a great point, Jim. Thank you. And you actually sent me a picture today. We have a new sign. Well, there's a historic sign at the Citizens Library, and then Carrie found, like, I call it a shingle where it said open, but it had old hours on it. And so we were able to get that repainted, and it says open on both sides. So people driving up from or walking up from either direction will now know that the library is in fact open. But you're right, it's open 28 hours a week, and we're open all the hours we say we're going to be. So thank you.
Wanted to quickly segue into, first of all, this is awesome. I love this handout and your photos and the budget book. But what would a Sunday look like? What is your traffic on Sunday if potentially hours were, you know, the library was closed on a Sunday? I was just curious.
Sundays tend to be really busy for us. It's a day that we also take advantage and have programs, like musical programs. But I'm going to defer to Harry because you have a lot of the numbers on how we're doing on Sundays right now.
So we only just recently expanded the hours. We were traditionally open 2 to 5. And in early May, we added an additional hour. However, the cost was only a half hour because staff were already coming in for a half hour to open. And that showed a slight increase early on for the number of visitors, but we, on average, for those 4 hours, are getting 300 and sometimes 400. When we have a concert, we had the Madrigals in December, we had over 500 people come in for those 4 hours. So it's growing, and I think the more that we are able to do programs and events on Sundays and the more we're able to advertise it, that will just continue. The thing I've noticed about Acton is that people have a lot of stuff to do during the week, and so people really take advantage of the libraries on the weekend.
Thank you.
Along those lines, has there been a look at if hours were cut back, cutting them back on a weekday rather than weekend time?
We have discussed that, and yeah, we have talked about it. We have made a decision about that. If need be, probably one of the nights would have to, or maybe we'd open later. Of course, our concern with that is that we do have people who telecommute, and they do that from the library. And so that would be really impactful to people to open later when they want to get in and get that study room. Did you want to add to that? But definitely we've talked about what we would do. We see, I mean, Sundays would be tough, but also less impactful to people that do use us throughout the day, every day of the week.
I will say, when I arrived about 3 years ago, we had 2 study rooms. They were very small study rooms. They could only accommodate 3 people max. within the first 6 months, we converted an unused microfilm room to an additional study room. And within the first month of opening that up, usage went up 200%. So it's really trying to, when we're looking at hours, it's like, where are we going to do the least harm in closing? And so the balance has always been, Acton is a community meeting space, so closing in the evening then limits people's, groups' availability to be able to meet in the public space. Closing during the day hurts telecommuters and young parents. So it's under discussion of where we could do it, but it's.
I should add also that we did make a change a few months ago. We used to be open until 9, and looking at those numbers, we did go back to 8 o'clock, which was a little impactful to people trying to use the meeting rooms, but we also saw that the foot traffic was the lowest, and that could be a bit of a cost-saving measure.
On the Citizens Library, as someone who had a little kid over there, you'll easily get above 5. I went when there was top time, and we easily had a ballpark 10 kids, and that was a program you had to sign up for and do every time. There were also a few computers in the back room, and I remember being there in afternoons and seeing kids come through. Is that still happening? I'm wondering in terms of the teen.
At the Citizens Library, they still have 2 computers. They get used by adults that come in. Right now, we're not seeing children really come in to use the computers, but they're also aged out, and so at some point, we do hope to replace those or come up with a different model for accessing technology there. But some people bring their own devices, is what I've been told by staff, and then some people just use those 2 computers when they're available.
And do you know of any usage by Gates and Douglas kids? And it's a nice walkable place for them to go. Is there any sort of like study happening there?
We did, when we had a library manager there, she was working on reaching out to the schools to try and get more visits, like school visits to come. So right now we've kind of reprioritized that, but we are hoping that the members of the Children's Department over at Memorial can kind of reignite those connections and hopefully encourage people and let them know that they're open. They're only open until 5, but Saturday's 9 to 1 if people wanted to come and do that, the younger kids.
A big need I hear from my kids is places to go after school, and they're not going to be playing Rockets in the library, but even if it's somewhere.
Yeah, well, we would want them to maybe play Rockets. We were trying to start a robotics club, so.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
So I don't have another question, but I just want to take the opportunity to mention that there's a lot of potential that I see for Citizens Library to increase visitors, increase programs. There's COVID was a huge disruption, but also the staffing, the retirements and the turmoil there. But I learned a new phrase today. It's called third places or third spaces. Okay, you're nodding. You've heard of that. Was a new phrase for me. It's a community center, a gathering space, and it's really, really critical that we as a community maintain that. And I think that in Acton we do value that. But when we're looking at budget numbers and crunching numbers, it's easy to think, oh, let's just close the library on Sunday. But thinking about from through an equity lens, a community gathering space might be a coffee shop, but there's really the expectation that you're gonna buy food and coffee when you go there. You don't have to spend any money to go to the library. So that's one of the reasons that I love this. These are dollars that people are saving, and this is what your library card buys you. And so it's really important for us to continue investing in our libraries.
That's a good closing remark. Thank you, library. Thank you. Nice job. So we're going to keep going because I already asked and people seemed like they were good. So our next group that we're going to hear from is, it's a newer, again, another change in how we structure things. We now have a Health and Human Services group, which is essentially the folks over at the Human Services and Senior Center building, but it also now includes staff from the Board of Health. So part of the Health and Family Services team is going to be presenting here next, and we're going to start with Matt Dow.
Thank you, John. Good evening. My name is Matthew Dow, Interim Health Director. I took over the director position about 3 months ago from Cheryl Ball, who you all must know. I've been working for the town for 9 years. At this time, there are 3 full-time employees in my department, including myself. I have 1 health inspector, Felix Garcia, and 1 admin, Wei-Yun Sun. The health division's budget starts on page 69 with the actual budget details on page 71. The health division has general oversight over health operations, including food, septic, camps, housing, pools, body art, body works, freshwater beaches, emergency preparedness, hazardous materials, and sealer of weights and measures. In addition, we routinely apply for and receive grants to promote health and wellness in our community and use these grants to plan for public health programming related to the current needs of the community. The Health Division is responsible for 5 budgets, 1 general fund budget, 1 enterprise, and 3 revolving account budgets. All proposed budgets have been level funded with the exception of position control. As you can see from the metrics on page 70, for fiscal year 23, some of the permit numbers we have are down. For example, food permits issued in fiscal year 22, are over 80 more than what we issued in fiscal year 23. That is because food establishments and caterers have closed due to COVID. I'd also like to draw your attention to the hazardous waste day line. Each hazardous waste day that the health division runs costs us around $15,000 to $18,000 per event. There is money set aside in that account for contingencies for what could be brought in on that day, because you just never know what people would show up with. So thank you so much for your time. Any questions?
Why is the septage number down so much?
So we haven't seen there's not as much turnover this year as there has been in previous years. So people aren't selling their homes, getting that Title V to see if their septic system's in failure and needs to be replaced or not.
Do you have any metrics on inspections?
So those go usually with the number of permits that we have. So usually the number of permits goes with an inspections or multiple inspections for septic, for example.
Okay, thanks.
So permits is not when you pump your septic and you get charged the $35 additional that goes to the town. That's not included in the permits, right?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
When you have a septic system, like I do, and you pump it once a year, and they get a $35 charge on the bill that goes to the town, that's not included in that.
It is. That's a filing fee for us to file that away in our street files.
So that's in part of the permits?
It is. That's the fee for the permit. One of the permits, there's a septage fee. There are multiple septage fees that we have. One of those is for filing fee for pumping slips, we call it.
Okay, because I'm looking here and it says only 80 last year. That was only like Title V though, was that what you're referring to?
Those are all repair as well as new construction, as well as pumping fees.
So only 80 people pumped their septic last year?
Well, you're supposed to do it every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
This may not include that metric. This may just be a portion of that.
Yes, the possibility it's just a portion of it.
Yeah, because I mean, I got a small tank, so I pump mine every year to be safe, so.
Rather be safe than sorry.
Exactly. Thank you.
Has the cost of disposing of hazardous waste changed over time?
No, we hire a company that runs the hazardous waste days for us, and they stayed pretty consistent over the last 3 or 4 years.
Matt wanted more questions. He told me earlier today.
Yeah. Thanks for stepping up and, filling Cheryl's shoes. Yeah, big job. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
He's doing a great job. Thanks, Matt. So I'd like to welcome the Director of Nursing, Heather York. Also part of the Health and Family Services team.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you. I'm Heather York, for anyone that doesn't know me. I have been with the town for the last 19 years. I've been the director of the nursing department for the last 13. So I'll be presenting the nursing budgets, which start on page 72 of your budget book through page 75. So the nursing department provides both public health services and home care services. A description of these services are on page 72. I'll just do a quick little overview of some. The first is the nursing service budget, which is our home care agency. So those are including skilled nursing services, physical, occupational, and speech therapies, certified home health aid services, medical social work. Those are the services we provide and we do as home visits. Our public health part of our agency, we do things such as that are state mandated, disease surveillance. So as you know, during COVID, we did a lot of disease surveillance for that, but other things are like flu, TB, salmonella, et cetera. So those are things that we do on a daily basis. We do a variety of clinics, including wellness clinics, flu clinics, podiatry clinics, et cetera. We do monthly health discussions. We provide home safety evaluations. We work with the town safety net for fire and police and the health department for anyone in town that is thought to be at risk, where we can go out and do a home visit to do an evaluation or a home safety evaluation by one of our therapists. So those are just an overview of what we do. On page 73 of the budget book are some statistics for both the public health and the nursing budgets. I would like to note, I know one of the questions that you mentioned earlier about the drop in some of the metrics overall. While it shows that our home visits are dropping, and this has been happening since COVID, there are other reasons for the decreasing numbers, such as changes in treatments that are more effective for patients. As an example, wound care over the last 5 to 10 years has changed drastically, where, 10 years ago, doctors would order a daily dressing, where now we're using more effective dressing changes, that they're less frequent visits during the week. So that's part of just a simple explanation of some of those. While the visits are a great metric to follow, it isn't just a graphic that we look at that coincides with revenue for reimbursement. The better statistic, which I think we should start using, and we discussed this earlier today, would be our overall admissions on an annual basis. So as the average number of admissions over the last 5 years is about 108 for the nursing admissions for the home visits. You'll also notice the decrease in the number of influenza vaccinations since COVID happened. This coincides with a decrease in our purchase of flu vaccine over the last 3 years, with an even larger decrease in FY25. And this is based on my belief that residents in general, overall, in Acton, outside of Acton, got used to going to pharmacies during COVID for COVID vaccinations. We did large COVID clinics here in town, but after that initial vaccination happened, those, fell off. People started going to the pharmacies for their additional boosters and now the new vaccinations. And I feel that flu is the same way. So this year, we really limited it to just a small senior clinic at the Human Services and Senior Center building, because we really lost the demographic of families and kids. There's also been a noticeable but slow increase overall in the health promotion activities since post-COVID, including our blood pressure and podiatry clinics. On page 74 of the budget book are the 2 nursing budgets. Both of these budgets are level funded with some shifting of monies on some of the line items, as I will explain. The increase in both budgets are related to position control, with our services staying at about $144,000. Over the two budgets, there are 5.8 FTEs. The first budget, the 01522 VNA home visit budget, the staff included in this budget are myself, our clinical manager, Kathy Flannery, our community health nurse, Elizabeth McNamara, our admin assistant, Denise Whitney, and our certified home health aide, Kathy Breest, as well as 5 open positions, which include 3 per diem or as-needed positions for nursing, and 2 per diem certified home health aides. These were discussed earlier in the evening also. Unfortunately, with the healthcare climate being what it is, there is a shortage of healthcare workers across the industry. And those really high numbers are our certified home health aides and then our nurses, unfortunately, where people have been struggling to fill these positions since post-pandemic, which I'm sure you all see within your own healthcare providers. Unfortunately, because of these open positions, things like home visits and weekend call then fall on myself and the clinical manager over the last couple of years, and we have been struggling since COVID to fill especially those nursing positions. So the changes by line item are as follows. The 520-400 miscellaneous equipment and software. This was an increase related to software changes that we started in FY23 with John's go-ahead for streamlining our referrals. Typical referrals would be phone calls where we'd play phone tag with a discharge planner who their department is also understaffed. This is a cloud-based software that is HIPAA compliant. The referrals come in, we get email immediately that there's one there, and we can respond in real time instead of having to make repeated phone calls, so streamlining that process. The 520902 and 520903 are both the nursing and home health aide mileage. I've decreased that based on the actuals for the last few years. The 521500, the telephone line item, again, this money has shifted up to the miscellaneous software and equipment to cover that new software program. And then it's based on our on-call service, the actual fees that we pay for that. We have we're on call 24/7, so when we're not open, we have an on-call operator that answers our calls and then calls the on-call nurse. I say page because I'm really old, and we had pagers back then. The 522700 contractual line item, I'd like to increase this budget. For the first time in a while, I've actually decreased it the last 3 fiscal years based on just trying to decrease my overall budget when we've been asked to do that. So I would like to increase this based on the actuals that we did have last year. And then our 575000, the liability insurance, this is a requirement as a Medicare certified agency for the home health staff. And this is just our premium going up, and it has been going up the last few years. Our second budget is the 01520. This is the public health budget. And the staff that are in this are also myself, also Kathy Flannery, our clinical manager, also our admin assistant, Denise Whitney, and then we currently have an open position. Our public health nurse, Jill Salomon, left in September. Because of these open public health positions, again, Kathy and myself and our community health nurse, Elizabeth, at a smaller level, are covering the public health outreach, the wellness visits, the clinics, the disease surveillance, et cetera, until that position has been filled. We have held off posting this position related to the restructuring that John mentioned earlier of the Health and Human Services departments and the new Health and Family Services division. And then the changes, lastly, to the line items, there's just 2. It's just shifting of money. 521900 is our professional services. That is actually our programming that we provide, and the focus of that programming aligns with the select board's goals of mental health programming. So we do things like horticultural therapy, yoga, meditation, et cetera. And we're looking to do more of those. I actually have a grant proposal out to Emerson Health for a community health grant that I'm hoping to get notified next week that we'll be getting, so that will help offset some of those costs. And then the 540-250, this will go down, and this is the decrease in the flu budget, as I mentioned earlier. Happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Heather.
Sure.
You might have mentioned this, and I think I missed it. Billable supplies, I see that you have a $7,000 budget, and the prior 2 years, one was $39.89, and the other one was $2,001. So I'm wondering why that's, quite a bit higher compared to what actuals were the last couple of years.
Sure. So our billable supply line item is actually the supplies that we order for residents or patients who have specific needs, orders for dressing supplies, wound care supplies, equipment that they need that they can't, you have to get through an agency. What happens is when we order these supplies, it goes directly to the patient, it's per patient. And then that gets rolled into the reimbursement, and it changes based on what patients we have when. Not everybody needs supplies, but some people need additional, or more expensive supplies like dressings, like ostomy supplies, things like that. That's why the cost changes.
Thank you.
Hi, Heather. Has it really been 19 years?
It has. I know. Hi, Steve.
I'm not going to talk about the past. So, I guess the questions I have are more about, you have your budget, you have revenue come in. Okay, I'll say the revenue doesn't cover the cost of the visiting nurse service. But what I see is we budget $100,000 more than the actuals. This pattern, and you turn back the money you don't spend. If you had the staff, would the metrics be higher? Is this a chicken and egg situation, or is it?
Not necessarily, no. Those open positions have been open for quite a while, and that's hence why we've had the turnbacks. If you notice, the visit numbers, have gone down in the last 5 to 6 years significantly. I can point out that, FY18, FY19, FY20, we had long-term patients that fought their health insurance to have a daily home health aide. So service numbers were a lot higher. And then when COVID hit, numbers sort of dropped through the floor. And we've been holding steady in the admission, for the last 6 years. Like I said, we're in the 108 range, and that's been pretty consistent for the last 6 years, excuse me.
So I'll throw this one to John because we've had this discussion over the years. So why are we carrying the open positions in the budget if indeed we don't fill them? And if we did fill them, we might not get much more revenue.
Well, I think the positions are 5 or 6 hour a week positions, so cutting them is not a huge cost savings in the grand scheme of things. So we certainly would go there if we're asked to, but that's generally why. But maybe Heather has a better answer?
I have sort of the same answer. So the open positions that we have in the home care budget is $59,000. So the three nursing positions that we had, that all 3 left during COVID, those folks covered overflow visits during the week, but primarily the weekends. Unfortunately, because they're not here now, 3.5 weekends or 3 weekends, are split between myself and the clinical manager. That's primarily what per diem nurses do. It's that overflow, it's that weekend visits on call. Yes, if they were all cut, would I be sad? Yes, because I work
would have
full-time
more
and I'm
weekends,
tired of doing weekends. I did my job, I've been a nurse for a long time, so.
Well, thank you.
I'm wondering about the public health impact of the lack of staffing. Are we turning people away that need services, or is it more we're not able to offer the kind of educational opportunities that would be nice to be able to offer that would benefit people, or what?
So Jim, you're asking about the public health, Jill Salamon's open position, is that correct? The public health nurse?
Well, actually on both sides. We can talk about costs and revenues, but ultimately what we care about is, are we serving the health needs of the people of Acton? And I'm just wondering are there negative impacts right now from the lack of staffing on either side?
Sure. So I would say, no, we don't refuse or turn away patients that we can take care of for nursing. I'm a nurse, Kathy Flannery's a nurse. We go out and we do visits on top of what Elizabeth does, and that happens a lot on the weekends. Where we struggle, I think, more with, and it's not from a nursing standpoint, it's more from a therapy standpoint. We struggled a little bit over the summer. I had a therapist who was out with an injury. I had a therapist who was out on maternity leave. It was the perfect storm. Medicare guidelines say that if I cannot give service to a patient based on what the hospital, doctor, rehab is asking, I can't accept them. So are there times when we have had to turn patients and not accept them? Yes. Just like every agency in the state right now, because what we hear from discharge planners is, you're not the only one that has a backlog of therapy patients.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I've had this explained to me before, I'm still confused. It sounds a lot like the home health side is a business that we're running within the town, like you get paid by people in insurance. Is that a common thing for a town to have?
It's not. There's actually two towns in Massachusetts, Acton and Stoughton, currently that are still doing this model. As I explain, and I've done this, not a problem that I'm explaining it. VNAs started because towns did home care visits. And in 1966, Medicare started certifying agencies where they could start charging revenue for all of the things that they were doing for free, like therapy visits, like nursing visits, et cetera, home health aid visits. And then in 2015, the town residents really came out positively to continue doing what we're doing, because it was discussed, as Steve was nice enough to say how long I've been here, to not have the nursing service. And the residents really went to bat for the town and the town residents and the department overall, and that's why we're still here today.
Now, as a town service, I know we do take clients, I don't know what to call them, from other
Patients,
towns.
yeah.
Are they also subsidized effectively, or is there a higher rate for out-of-town patients?
So no, we can't charge differently for people that are outside of Acton. I'm going to loosely say, because I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but I can look into it, that 96% to 97% of all of our admissions yearly are Acton residents. It's a small percentage of people that are outside of town. We do not take people outside of town that don't have insurance, and that's been for years, because there was always the question of that. Or insurances that we don't have a contract with. That's not something that we do, because we don't get any kind of reimbursement.
Okay. On the cost side, my understanding is that billing has become even more of a headache over the last 5-10 years. Is that something that you have a good system for keeping control on, or is it?
So I do the billing. I have multiple hats. That was, when we were streamlining, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, Steve and Dean might remember this. We lost employees at the time, and we started picking up and doing other things. So I'm the person that does the billing. We have a software program that bills directly to Medicare. Our other HMO, PPO, we do invoices that get mailed to those vendors that we have contracts with. We receive payments, those get posted to patient charts. The revenue goes to the finance department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you say you mail them, do you actually have it in an envelope?
In an envelope with a stamp.
There's no way to do it electronically?
No.
Like PDF, secured PDF to an email box at?
Not for all of the HMOs, unfortunately. They still use certain billing
I wonder why
forms.
healthcare costs a lot of money.
90% of the mail I get is from Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Do you have an idea of about how many people you serve in a month, I guess, or whatever metric you have?
Are you thinking, are you looking at home visits as opposed to public health, or both? Just to get an idea.
Yeah, so more like the visiting nurse side of things.
Okay.
Program.
I would, can I use a loose number and I can get back to you?
Absolutely, I will not.
Our typical day is typically, 6+ nursing visits.
Per person or total?
Total.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Daily,
Yep.
Monday through Friday, and then added on to the weekends. Home health aide is probably about 5 to 6 every day,
Okay.
4 to 5 days a week. Physical, occupational visits, anywhere from, probably around the same, 6 to 8 visits a day,
Okay.
I would guess.
Okay. So nearing 20 total combined. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Just curious.
Sure.
I'd just like to point out that, I've got a family member who's had the opportunity to benefit from the services of the nursing service, and they really do a great job. And especially if you have a mobility impairment, can't get out very easily, having folks be able to come to your house is just great. So I think, they represent a real value to the community, and they're sort of the program that I think we should make sure that we keep it in a robust situation. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean.
Dean, could you actually talk about that a little more? Because as someone who has not used this, it seems like there are companies out there that do this. So I'm a little unclear how this is different from, like, how this wouldn't be filled another way. That if the town wasn't doing this, there wouldn't be someone else who I would hire who would come in.
I'll let Dean answer that in detail, but I will just say that from what little I've known as the liaison to the Nursing Services Advisory Committee, the information that I'm picking up, people are happy with these services, and you don't always hear that, right? The satisfaction rates.
Oh, no, I understand that. I'm trying to understand again.
Comparable to other agencies that do that. So
Well,
that's a
we also
quick answer
fund
to your
this.
why.
We subsidize this process, which, it sounds like we're doing a great job. I'm just trying to understand at a time when we're looking at having the serious expense issues that we do right now, why this is something that continues to be a value to the town to subsidize when there are other resources for it. So I'd love to hear more about your experience in that regard.
Well, I think, that you've got a couple of situations going on. You've got a population here in town which is increasing in age. The senior population keeps going up. A lot of folks in that senior population might not drive or might not feel as confident being able to drive, might not have a caregiver at home that can drive. So, for instance, some simple things like wound care issues. Yeah, you can go to Emerson at Baker Ave, and they've got a wound care center that will, gives great service. We've had the opportunity to use that as well. But it's a real problem. If you're living by yourself and you have a wound that needs to be cared for and you cannot drive as a result of that wound, you're kind of stuck. And, you know, the move throughout the healthcare industry with trying to get people up out of the hospital beds and home is great, but then there's that gap there. If somebody has some care that needs to be taken care of and they can't drive, we know, you know, our transportation folks do the best they can to get people to medical appointments, but if it's a routine sort of a wound care issue, that's a problem. It's a problem getting scheduled. As people age and don't have as much mobility as they have in the past, they just don't have the opportunity to get out. So there's sort of a gap in services. And it's not just, you know, there are medical professionals either on Baker Ave or available through our nursing service, but it's the problem of getting the patient to that service. And I think that's one of the nice things about the Acton nursing service is that they will come to the patient if they don't have any other options for how to get that work done.
So are you saying there are not other, like, companies that do that? Because what you're describing to me is a great argument for why there are home health aides, but I thought that existed as something separate from this service from the town.
Well, in my family situation, we've had the opportunity not to have to look any further than our local nursing folks. But, you know, there might very well be other options out there, but I think there's a lot of comfort of having locally provided services. And it doesn't necessarily come down to dollars and cents.
Agreed, but in a time when we're looking at overrides every dollar and cent,
Well,
it does need to be discussed.
I'm certainly concerned about dollars and cents as well. But I think, you know, if we start thinking about, you know, you look at the situation that Heather referred to when there was a serious attempt some years ago to close the nursing service, again, for financial reasons. And then you realize how many people who don't normally show up at town meetings, but they were concerned enough to come to town meeting because they had been direct beneficiaries of the kind of care that the nursing service is traditionally given. So yeah, I'm sure that if there's only 2 public health nursing services left in the entire Commonwealth, I'm sure that other agencies have stepped in, but I'm just saying that, you know, these are one of the things that makes Acton unique. And I think people value that. I constantly hear the emails that come in telling us that the schools are the center of our community. Well, certainly the schools are very important, but there are other centers of our community. And I think, you know, nursing service and that sort of care, personalized care, is equally important, especially to the elder population. Don't necessarily have kids in school anymore, paying high taxes. We want to keep people in their homes. One of the ways to do that is to make it easy for them to receive medical care as opposed to, you know, having to move into some care home someplace. So it's a value judgment that I think we've got to balance the human effects as well as the budgetary effects. And that's speaking as one of the real, what I've considered myself to be one of the real budget hawks on the select board. A real cheap SOB, frankly. But I still think, you know, you do have to balance these things.
I think we've gotten a good preview of the discussion we're going to need to have on this topic.
I'm sorry,
The unique opportunity we have tonight is that we have staff here. So if the staff have more to say on this topic, I'd like to hear about it. Jason, you have a different question? Or I just wanted to try to close out on this particular question before we moved on. Is it about?
Yes. It's regarding nursing service. Do we have a clear understanding of the systemic break-even point? Do we have a clear understanding of exactly when we will no longer need a subsidy? Is it 30 patients a day? Is it 22 patients a day? Is it a mix of which type of patient? Or is this service permanently going to be in requirement of subsidy? So I'd like to know if we have a full systemic understanding of when this service breaks even, or if it will always be something that has to be subsidized.
Great, that's a nice change of topic, and it's still on nursing. Do you have a, John or Heather, do you have a way of talking about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question that I don't think we have the exact analysis completed. I think a lot has changed with the healthcare industry and how billing happens and what we can bill for and what we can't bill for. And so that's something that we certainly could look at again and try to understand what, have a better sense of what that looks like. But the revenue that we do bring in fluctuates. If you look at the total spending, like the revenue last year was over 200,000. And the years before that were less than 200,000, and 3 years prior were over 200,000. Going back 5 years, it was almost 400,000. So I think as we continue to restore the way we provide the service, we're hopeful that the revenue will pick up. But if not, I think we'll continue to look at that. So, but your question I think is a good one. If we're doing 20 visits a day, as we talked about earlier, if we were doing 60 visits a day, would we be making a profit, for example, right? Is that what you're asking? And I think we can certainly look at that. And
the corollary of that is, if we do the math to figure out where the break-even point is, the corollary question is, what is the likelihood, what is the probability that we're going to meet that break-even point on a regular basis? Because that should inform heavily whether this is a service that is long-term viable or not an ongoing concern.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Just one comment, since I was at the special town meeting. At the time, your predecessors on the Board of Selectmen promised the people that were there that this would be revenue neutral or break even within 2 years. That was 2015, 2016. It's never achieved that. There's a lot of reasons why. It's a wonderful service. They suffer from a competitive disadvantage because even when I was getting out of the hospital a few years ago, I had to beg the doctor to give me a prescription to allow Acton nursing service to provide my care, as opposed to the ones that they're already associated with at the hospital, who they probably are getting kickbacks from. I didn't say that.
Can I just add one thing? I think the easiest way to answer Jason's question is just do it historically, because there's a lot of unknowns obviously going forward. If you just went back with all the data that is factual and just determine the break-even point for the prior 3 years, you might see a trend. That's just my point.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question, a little bit different. The nursing services have the largest amount of staff here, and it's largely separate from the public health mission. But during COVID, that wasn't necessarily a separate mission. How is that managed, and does that happen from time to time, or just during pandemics, or how does that work?
Every 100 years, exactly. Please. No, during COVID, I had a public health nurse that was a under 19-hour position when COVID hit. Her and I worked 7 days a week until she retired because it was a lot in September of 2020. Then I did that position. I am in the public health budget also at 34%. I'm 66% in the nursing budget. We eventually got another public health per diem person who did end up taking the public health job, but that was how we covered those hours.
Thank you.
Sure.
Heather, thank you. I just have a quick question, and it's sort of nitpicky, but the small percentage that is out of town, I was surprised to hear that you do service folks out of Acton. Is that because they lived here at one point, or?
That was a change prior to my taking this position. The select board at the time, to increase referrals, decided to start taking referrals from the towns surrounding Acton. So we cover Boxborough, Carlisle, Concord, Stowe, Maynard. Is that it? Yeah.
Thank you. And it is an old-timey service, but I also like that it's unique. And you do more than just change wounds. I mean, you provide hospice, don't you?
We do not provide hospice, no.
Okay, I was under.
No, not hospice or palliative care, no.
I have one last question. For the ones that are out of town, do we break even for those?
So the question of always breaking even or what your revenue is per patient, it varies based on insurance. Specifically, Medicare versus HMOs or PPOs, even Medicare HMO PPOs. The billing is the same, no, I can't say the same. The billing is different in the fact of HMOs, PPOs, we have contractual, contracts with insurance providers that are at a per visit rate. So as an example, a typical nursing visit is $124.60 reimbursable. That's much more than what I pay my visiting nurse to do that visit. On the other hand, Medicare pays at a different level. Medicare pays at a 30-day time frame. So a patient is admitted to service. We do a comprehensive assessment for both Medicare and HMOs. Same assessment, 150-ish questions that are documented. Medicare takes that along with their diagnosis code, all of those answers, and they put it into a machine and a computer that says, this is what we're going to pay you over a 30-day period. Now, I could have a patient that has the same exact diagnosis for Medicare and the same exact diagnosis for an HMO. And an HMO, if we did 6 visits, I'd get about $850. 6 visits under Medicare could be $2,500. So the payer mix makes a difference also. In the time that we previously talked about where the nursing service was brought to town meeting, that case mix had shifted hugely because Medicare then started having HMO and PPOs that pay at a much less level than straight Medicare. As an example, like last fiscal year, out of our patient mix, 59 patients had Medicare, 50 had HMOs. So the payment is different. So it's hard to gauge that reimbursement rate because I can't guess who I'm going to get and what their insurance is going to be. That's my long, short answer.
Thanks. I think my concern is that we go out of town to service another community and we lose money. We lose, we're not covering the cost. Versus if it's an Acton resident, they're paying taxes, so it's coming up, we're getting some other form, so to speak. We're not going to the Concord and saying, well, we had 10 visits in your town and we lost. We didn't cover our costs and we were off by $1,000 and send Concord a bill. Kind of doesn't work that way. So, that's my concern. I think the select board should look at that and say, hey, maybe we should stop servicing these other communities for that service. it's something to consider.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say that I am curious that it was a select board vote that opened it up to other communities, and I'm open to revisiting that. I think it's a good point. But I also want to say that one could say that you could do the same analysis, and Roland's not listening to me, but I'm responding to what he just said. You could say the same thing about anybody who comes here from another town and uses our trails or goes to our fireworks festival. So the dollars are easy to see here, but it's the same impact. And I do have one last question for you, Heather. It looks to me like there's a small increase over time in the physical therapy versus occupational therapy. Is that something that is just happening, or is that something that you're marketing or shifting a focus to? And where do you see that maybe impacting the budget, like if there's a diversification of services over time?
So thank you for pointing that out. So our physical therapist visits have been going up, and honestly, I can equate that to we do a public health programming at the Human Services and Senior Center. Our physical therapist does a Balance Matters program. We've been doing it for the last 3.5 years or so. We did it during COVID outside, so it's been that long. Karen Patterson and Anna Cooper, Belzer, I always say her maiden name, are a much-loved duo that do these classes. We book them every quarter. They're actually funded by our Friends of the Acton Nursing Service. These classes were so well-loved that an anonymous donor came forward to do and to pay their charges that they charge fans for additional maintenance classes that we provide 2 classes every week. People get to know them, they trust them, and I think those referrals, the increased referrals and the numbers for physical therapy are because of our staff.
I lied. I have one more thing to say. I just wanted to say thank you for the wonderful virtual Java with John. I watched that every Friday during the pandemic when we couldn't go anywhere. And I really appreciated your contribution to that, Heather.
Oh, thank you.
Back on the number side, it was a lot easier to understand the general fund subsidy for this back when it was, I believe, a revolving fund. Enterprise fund, thank you. Any information that could be given for us, idea of revenue versus the expenses allocated to the home care side, not
Sure,
otherwise would
we
be
can do that.
especially helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice work, Heather. Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
So I'd like to just finish the Health and Family Services team with a presentation from Laura Ducharme. Laura doesn't have a specific budget in the budget book, but she provides a lot of services that she's going to highlight a few of them this evening.
Good evening. My name is Laura Ducharme, and I oversee the Community Services Department. This department was established in 2009 to provide comprehensive case management services to residents, primarily under the age of 60. My department is a department of one. I do not have a line item in the budget except for my salary, and the resources and funds that I use to assist residents come from a variety of private donations, some of our trust funds like the Elizabeth White Fund, and also government funding such as the CARES Act and the ARPA funds. The primary focus of my job is to provide needs-based services in a case management model. Some of these services would be application support to public benefit programs, referrals for assistance to local nonprofits, holiday support, I was doing back to school, but we have a new collaboration with the AB Resource Center. So for this upcoming new school year, a lot of my supplies have been transferred over there. So we did exchange with that. Fuel assistance and utility disconnection resources through the ARPA funds. And I want to thank the board for providing these funds to my office. They have been invaluable to help the families. We have helped in FY23 with the $40,000 from the child care subsidies. 14 children received child care assistance. This year, we are also on track to spend that $40,000, and that money has been committed to the end of the school year, and that will be helping 15 children. These monies also support our local child care programs in Acton and the extended day program through Community Ed. The Emergency Assistance Program has been a lifeline for so many residents. I don't know what we would do if we didn't have that money allocated from the ARPA funds. Since the end of February, I received 110 applications for assistance. All of them were approved. The residents met the criteria. There was nobody that was denied. And as of today, we have committed just under $100,000 of the original $150,000. So thank you very much. Along with the case management and the financial assistance programs, we also do a lot of emotional support, crisis intervention, and referrals to mental health services. My office has recently been involved as staff liaison for the Human Services Committee, and we are excited to reconvene this committee next week on the 18th. We've had a hiatus due to quorum, so we are ready to get back into the mix of things. I also belong to a regional hoarding task force that myself and Beth Van Emberg from the police department attend on a monthly basis. And my office is also involved in the Community Resource Network meetings that are monthly through AB, in schools and towns and clergy, and a variety of other folks attend pretty regularly. So that is a little bit about my department. Do you have any questions?
Just a lot of thank yous, because I know I've worked with people who, we've been able to refer to you and you've been able to help, and it's been great to have you there and to have, and I'm glad you have some of the resources that you need to fulfill these needs.
Thank you.
And Laura has also been instrumental in helping to support the rollout of the emergency shelter at Minuteman Inn, and with the work that we're doing as an organization to support that effort. So, thank you, Laura. Nice job.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so our next presentation is from the District Director of Veteran Services for Acton and Boxborough.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm James McCrae. I'm the Veteran Service Officer for Acton and Boxborough. My job entails assisting veterans and surviving spouses, other family members with state and federal benefits, to include assisting with service-connected disability claims, navigating VA healthcare, VA pensions, things of that sort. I've been working for the town of Acton for over 12 years and started taking on Boxborough about 3.5 years ago. And if you refer to my budget, pages 76 through 78, one thing to note is that in the intermunicipal agreement with Boxborough, they cover 10% of all the line items, with the exception of flags for the cemeteries in Acton. We replace the flags and the flowers at veteran graves every spring, specifically just for the Acton cemeteries, as well as the last line item, veterans benefits. That's solely for Acton veterans and surviving spouses. And what that is known as a state benefit. It's my primary duty. Massachusetts is the only state in the country that by state law, there must be a veteran service officer for every single community, and the reason for that is for this benefit. Essentially, it's a form of welfare that assist veterans and surviving spouses as well. Additionally, it's important to note that that portion of my budget is, 75% of it is reimbursed from the state. So essentially, very close to level services, if not level. Happy to field any questions.
Well, since we just had a big discussion about, nursing services, I'm wondering about the connection between when there are veterans that need home nursing services. Is there an interaction with the public health nursing service, or does that just go entirely through the VA, or how does that work?
Well, essentially, we look at the VA first. I utilize the VA healthcare system. I have to practice what I preach, right? So I've become pretty proficient in what eligibility criteria based on the veteran's circumstances, financial situation, as well as a lot of the benefits in the VA system is based on disability rating. So that's a big part of what I do as well, is assist veterans with service-connected disability claims, any physical or mental ailments, presumptive conditions from Agent Orange that we think was a direct result of military service. Based on the severity of those ailments, we're able to, hopefully VA sides in our favor and compensates the veteran based on the severity of that ailment. And with the different disability ratings comes certain benefits. So my understanding is that as long as you're eligible for VA healthcare, it's my understanding that they would provide at least 1 day per week of in-home care for veterans as well. Long-term care, nursing home care is a bit more of a niche benefit through the VA system. You have to be rated 70% service-connected disabled or higher to receive nursing home care at no cost through the VA. Hospice care drops back down to, you don't need any disability rating at all. You just have to be enrolled in the VA healthcare system.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? Just out of curiosity, you seem like you are doing a great job, and I don't know what you're doing. So, like you seem very confident. So my question to you is, what is the biggest challenge you're facing being successful at what you're doing? Because hearing you kind of just your mannerism there, it seems like you just are doing it the right way. But it's like challenges are not, I'm curious more than anything.
The challenges are that in the last 12 years, I do my best to get the word out about benefits. If you've seen open your mailboxes, you get the recent census letter. Every 2 to 3 years, I accompany that with an annual veteran census, and this year I'm doing it for Acton and Boxborough. Based on the responses, I've created a mailing list, and I do a biannual mailing leading up to Veterans Day, Memorial Day every year, detailing different benefits. But even having said that, I still have people that reach out to me. They never heard about my services. A lot of veterans that served in Vietnam don't know what the presumptive conditions are from exposure to Agent Orange, and that you could put in a claim for that as well. So I guess my job still, but the most difficult part is still getting the word out to veterans. You know, I served in the Army from 2004 to 2009 and to build up in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I know that when you're watching television, you just were inundated with ads, join the military, be all you can be. But when all's said and done, currently I've never seen one commercial from the VA promoting benefits after the fact, which is unfortunate. So that continues to prove to be the most difficult challenge, is just getting the word out best I can.
All right, so if you knew of all the veterans in Acton, that would be the biggest help for you, right?
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, I'd like to say I have an accurate estimate based on the responses provided, but that's just people who decide to respond.
It seems to me that would be an easy thing to get, but.
Yeah.
I'd just like to thank James as well. I've got 2 family members who are retired military, and James did a great job with connecting them with a lot of resources with the VA to deal with their disabilities. And there's a huge amount of paperwork, and it's kind of overwhelming for people that aren't thinking about all the time, and James did a great job. And to his most recent point, my family members were staying with me for a period of time, but they weren't familiar at all with the idea in this state of having a dedicated VSO. So I happen to know about the services of VSO because James and I shared an office for a while over in the Red House. So I said, you know, let's get down there and connect them. And so I think a lot of that, you know, the ability to let folks, especially who move in from other states that aren't familiar with the services that are available here, you know, connecting those veterans from other states to when they move in here with Jim and with other VSOs. But it's a great service that is certainly personally appreciated.
No,
Thank
thank
you,
you, Dean. Appreciate that feedback.
Following up on Jim's question, is there anything that would prevent nursing services in Acton having some sort of contract with the VA system? If we're talking about, you know, trying to break even and get our
There have
patients
been
up to 60
instances
a day.
where they've fallen into my mailbox, but they were meant for nursing. There have been situations in the past where billing from the VA for VNA's first services through the nursing department have been provided and comped by the VA, yeah.
Nice work. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we have planned for you 2 more presentations. Does that sound good? We're going to go now to the Council on Aging Director, Sharon Mercurio.
I was coming up anyway. Hi. Council on Aging is known for the Senior Center and the many diverse programs, classes, lectures, and meals that it offers. For many of our seniors in town, it's a home away from home. It's some place where they can connect with other people in their age group that are dealing with the same issues that they are. We've had so many losses this year, but it's such a nice place for widows and widowers to be able to support and connect with each other. The COA provides social services to Acton residents 60 and older, as well as information and referral to residents of any age that have concerns about an aging parent, loved one, neighbor, whatnot. We help seniors apply for food and fuel assistance, aid with housing applications, make referrals to appropriate agencies. We host a monthly Elder at Risk meeting where we gather with other town departments that interact with seniors, so nursing, housing, our first responders, and then various town agencies, just to help collaborate and put people on our radar that may not be on our radar. We're part of the Hoarding Task Force, and we're also part of Salvation Army. The COA offers free legal consultations, health insurance counseling, AARP tax preparation, and we've seen a really large increase in the complexity of the residents that we're dealing with. So a lot of mental health issues, a lot of homelessness, clients that maybe would have taken an hour or two to kind of resolve a situation, it's taking days and weeks. Acton's 60-plus population consists of over 5,600 seniors at this point. Last fiscal year, we provided services at the center to 2,100 of those older adults. And as you can see from the data, we've exceeded our pre-COVID numbers, which is exciting. This past summer was the busiest summer that we've ever had at the senior center. It used to be our time to kind of catch up, do some planning, that sort of thing. But we were 54%, we saw a 54% increase in participation from the previous summer. So it's been busy. The Friends of the Acton Council on Aging contribute about $23,000 each year. They fund the majority of our programs and classes. Their support enables us to offer these classes to our residents free of charge. which is a nice offset because we do hear often, the taxes are so high. So we use the state formula grant to fund 2 different staff positions, one of which is currently on hold. It helps also offset programs. It funds special events that we have. We do a 90s luncheon for everybody in town 90 and older. It helps fund our monthly memory cafe, helps us purchase equipment and offset other expenses that the operating budget may not. The majority of the COA operating budget consists of salaries, and that's per position control. And very little's changed in my budget this year, the services portion of the budget. We were instructed again to present a level service budget. So although when you look at it, some of the percentages seem really high, it's really only a couple of $1,000s that were moved from one place to another, and the bottom line remains the same. John will tell you, over the years, I've requested additional positions and additional funding for line items, but have been denied just, again, to follow the directives from the budget directives that have been given by the town manager. So, any questions for me?
How many extra people would be ideal, and what services would they support?
Can I answer this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I would love to see a full-time social worker. Again, right now I have a senior services coordinator who does an excellent job. She used to work with nursing, so again, it's this wonderful partnership we have. But the complexity, the mental health issues, that kind of expertise would be wonderful. Another big piece of what we do is nutrition. It's not only important because we see most people that aren't cooking for one, but just the normal socialization that occurs over a meal. So to have somebody that could oversee the kitchen at this point, because it's me, we have other things, so that would be ideal. And then front desk staff, that's kind of a need that I'm always pushing for, because I feel that's really, to be greeted when you walk into the building, so important, because especially where we're the hub of social services, if somebody's coming in for help, it's so important for them to be greeted and given the correct information.
Sharon, could you just repeat that contribution from the Friends group?
$23,000 each year.
As Dean mentioned, we're getting a lot of emails talking about how the schools are the center of the community, and that makes me sad, because I would love to see more interaction between, there's a strong school-based community. I would love to see it more overall. Have you considered programs that would get more of an interaction across?
Sure. And we do a lot of intergenerational programs. We have high school students that perform tech support, which is huge. They do music programs, raking they do in the spring and fall. The problem we have is when the kids are out of school, typically after 3, that's when our seniors tend to not be there. Our busiest times really are
Oh, so
early.
it's just a schedule?
Yeah.
Because I would love to see teenagers there greeting people to help you with the
Yes.
front of office, but it sounds like that
It's difficult.
just
Yeah.
wouldn't work. Thank you.
Sure.
I would like to specifically commend you with what looks like success for the bistro lunch program. That if people haven't taken advantage of that opportunity, they've got a great meal that's available Wednesdays and Thursdays, and there's no age limit on it.
No.
So, and I know that was part of the idea, was to start to draw people in so that seniors wouldn't feel like they're, stuck in a corner someplace. So I think that appears to be very popular. I know from a couple of my contemporaries, they're really happy with the pool table. So thank you for that. One question I've got is, from the times I go up there, I seem to be sensing a bit of a demographic shift of the people using it as far as the male-female split in the population. I know it used to be really tough to get old guys to go to the senior center, Have you noticed that, or do you have any statistics that can support that or refute it?
I can get the exact numbers for you, but we are seeing a slight increase in our male participants. For the most part, even across the board for all of Massachusetts, it's 2/3 women, 1/3 men. But I was struck, even when I started working in Acton, that there were males in our exercise classes. I hadn't seen that in other towns. But again, I think the pool tables helped. We have a hot topics group, computer club, and food. Because quite honestly, we have a lot of single men, and that's probably the only meal they have that day is at the senior center, so.
Great job, thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon, how many years are we into the lease of the building? It was a 10-year lease, as I recall.
It is up the 2027, I believe. We moved in 17.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Sounds
yeah.
about right.
It's a goal to work on that, long-term goal of the board, or maybe short-term. I can't remember, but we're working on that.
That's how long it takes, John. And I know a few old guys in town. I'll try and get them over there.
There you go, thank you. Bring them to the bistro.
I don't see the food costs in this budget, so how is the food being provided?
So a couple of different ways. We put in a grant for ARPA funds to open the bistro, so that's been great, getting that up and started. We have Meals on Wheels that runs out of our kitchen, so we partner with our state home care agency, Minuteman Senior Services. So once a month, we have a catered lunch from Robbins Brook Assisted Living that Minuteman subsidizes. We have lunch there every day through Minuteman. And then we do have some special meals that sometimes the friends will help subsidize, other times they kind of cover themselves.
Okay, so in general, it's not typically in our budget?
No, no, it's not.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are you seeing just speaking to the demographics again, an increase in the percentage of seniors who are utilizing, Ann Jang, using, she told me she doesn't like utilizing, using the senior center services? Because I can see the numbers are going up, but also the percentage of seniors in town is going up. So I'm just curious about, I can do all of the math, but if you know that, that would be great.
Don't have it with me, but I definitely am seeing that it is busier. We are seeing new people. I think 1 month we had 35 new people that had come into the center. December we only had 7, but every month we're seeing new people, so it's exciting. Sure. Am I good?
What are they serving at the cafe tomorrow?
Orange chicken, pot stickers. We always do something vegetarian, and he's great. I'm putting in the sales pitch since you're setting me up. Made to order, so if it's not in the menu, he's happy to accommodate.
$6 flat price. It comes with a little couple chips, little potato, pasta salad.
Yep.
It's worth it. Try it out.
What time?
11:30 to 1:30. Again, we with the change in demographics, just trying to meet those different needs. Instead of lunch at noon and having meatloaf and mashed potatoes, we're just trying to, again, keep people at the senior center, attract new people by food. Works for me.
Great, nice work. Nice job.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to close out the first night of the budget workshops with a presentation from Chief James Cogan.
Good evening. As John said, my name is James Cogan. I've been a police officer here in Acton for almost 40 years. I've been in the current role of chief for about a year. Joining me is former Lieutenant Deputy Chief Doug Cerniola, who's been in his role for about 6 months now and has been with the department for 23 years. Just a note, we're just beginning our second century of policing here in Acton. Mike Foley was the first police officer in Acton. He started in 1923. The Acton Police Department is committed to enhancing the quality of life for all in Acton, particularly the vulnerable, by working collaboratively with the community to enforce laws, maintain peace, and provide social services. We are dedicated to protecting the lives and property of everyone through compassionate, professional, and impartial police services. The police budget begins on page 84, and as you're aware, I assume you're aware, the majority of the budget is covering personnel costs. The Acton Police Department is comprised of 42 sworn officers, 1 full-time clinical responder, and a service dog named Zane, who not only provides comfort to our community, but also our police department, our police officers, dispatchers, and firefighters on a daily basis. We also have 8 special police officers. These are full-time trained, fully trained, post-certified officers who work extra duty, but they're at no cost to the department. We also have 10 traffic attendants who we've added over the last couple of years, who again work for utility companies and provide traffic services throughout town. Additionally, we have a new business manager who was mentioned earlier, and a records clerk. In calendar year 2023, which just ended, the department handled 27,518 incidents, an increase of over 10% from 2022. Motor vehicle traffic enforcement, including vehicle stops, increased 20% to 4,628 stops. The number of citations issued has also increased, and it's shown on page 85. We have deployed electronic speed signs periodically in more than 30 locations throughout the town to help remind motorists of the posted speed limits. Speeding and reckless driving is a concern shared by many of our residents and often reported to us. I continue to believe referrals to our clinical responders, in 2023 continued to increase. Section 12 numbers also remain high, a total of 99 reported in calendar year 2023. Now, I know that's a little different than what you're seeing on your paper, but not all were done by the police department. Not all Section 12s were completed by a police officer. They were done by other healthcare providers throughout the community who we also assist with and respond to. So that number is a little different. I continue to believe that our clinical responder and advanced training of all of our officers has improved our response and outcomes to calls involving a mental health component. We are also getting much more experience. All of our officers continuously respond to calls involving mental health, and they've become better at handling those types of calls. So I commend them for the work that they do in that response. We're all seeing much more of it, and I think our officers do a great job of it. Responses to overdoses, I can say, has significantly declined. We had 6 overdoses reported last year, only 1 fatal, and I think I attribute that to better access to Narcan. It's much more readily available to our residents. We continue to be committed to working alongside our community partners, including Communities for Restorative Justice, the Domestic Violence Service Network, our many Acton Town services, and local religious organizations and schools. We're trying our best to increase our community involvement. We held another Citizens Police Academy over the last year. We had a great attendance. We also had a week-long youth academy this summer at Nara Park. We had our first Cone with a Cop. There's a picture you can see in your packet of our Cone with a Cop, which we coordinated with Wanjiko, our DEI coordinator. It was a great event. We gave out over 350 ice creams, and we hope to repeat this going forward. We also participated in National Night Out and Open House, which is held the first Tuesday in August at our police department. Held several Coffee with a Cop events and increased our social media posts, hopefully getting the word out as to what we're doing. Our budget increases address the needs for patrol vehicle replacements and the implementation of a body-worn camera program, which we're just about to get started. And that will enhance our transparency and accountability. With the retirement of Detective Chris Brown last week, we are currently operating with 4 open police officer positions. It's challenging, as someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Mary Ann Fleckner, finding people for positions. But we hired 7 new police officers in 2023, so we're hopeful to hire some more in the coming months to fill the vacant positions that we currently have. The police department also oversees the budget for dispatch center with a staff of 9 full-time dispatchers, 3 part-time dispatchers. There are 2 dispatchers on duty at all times. Dispatchers take calls and coordinate an appropriate response by police and fire and EMS. Dispatchers serve both the police and fire department. Dispatchers also answer calls, 911 calls particularly. There were 5,678 911 calls, an increase of more than 5% in 2023. Dispatchers provide many vital tasks, including EMD. And that's just something I want to mention quickly, the importance of EMD, and it's emergency medical dispatch. And every person in Acton who calls 911 is connected to our dispatch center. And I would say there's probably a chance of them going somewhere else, but most of the time, whether it's a cell phone or a landline, they're getting connected to our dispatch center. And we have the best dispatchers in the area, in my opinion. They are highly trained in EMD and provide assistance to someone that's calling, for instance, someone reporting a heart attack, or someone reporting someone that's with them that's bleeding from a severe wound, someone maybe having a child, and maybe a child choking. They're there and they're instantaneously connected and giving a proper instructions for someone to help someone in a medical emergency. In many towns and cities, that service is transferred out. The dispatcher answers the phone and then pushes a button and transfers it somewhere else. That doesn't happen in Acton, and I think that's a great benefit to those who live in the community. So our dispatchers do a wonderful job, and I just want to give a quick recognition to them for the great work they do. And every second really does count when it comes to an emergency. The last part of our budget is on page 88, halfway down the page. It's animal control. It's the 3rd section, or the 3rd part that we oversee, and it has, as you can see, significantly increased. This is due to not having an increase in more than 7 years. Our ACO provides services to the community 24/7, 365 days a year. And the last thing I'd like to mention is that in 2023, we actively sought grant funding and have received more than $470,000 to help with the programs that we have within the police department, including dispatch, our body-worn camera program, the clinician that we employ with a grant from DMH, our traffic grant, and we just recently received a grant for some additional radios. So happy to answer any questions you have.
I recall with the idea of forming the RACC that it was going to cover some costs for E911 upgrades or some such. There were some upgrades to the system that were going to need to happen because of that.
Correct.
Where do we stand with that now that RACC, it sounds like, is rolling back?
So ironically, we ended up doing that anyways with a different grant because the dispatch center was taking too long to form. So we actually used a technology grant from the Community Compact Program to replace our CAD system, which is our, what does that stand for? Well, it's it's what they type into when they're on the phone with you. That system's been updated with a grant. And then the base radio system, which the dispatchers use to connect with everyone on the street, we're now upgrading that with funding from the Avalon mitigation. that was something that we were going to do with the regional dispatch grant money, which we're no longer counting on, and we need to do it. So we're using that other funding to get that accomplished.
Okay, does that get us to where it's a good level for us to be at? I'm sorry, I don't remember the details of what.
Yeah, I think it's a start. It's a step in the right direction. The radios that were installed in the dispatch center were installed in, I believe, 2004 when the building opened, and they're in need of replacement and upgrade.
And dispatchers, are those at a level where it's hard to hire? It sounds like they're key to the system.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
Sorry, it's getting a little late for me. I know you're having a hard time hiring police officers, but it sounds like dispatchers are also key to having the system work correctly.
Absolutely.
Are we having trouble staffing there, or are we?
We're currently down one. We had a retirement at the end of the year. Our dispatch supervisor, Marianne McLaughlin, retired, and we promoted one of our dispatchers into her position, so we're currently seeking candidates. We have a large pool that applied. We're hopeful we can get another good candidate. But it does take a significant amount of time to train them to be able to handle the pressure of the things I've described earlier. It's a it's 90% boredom, 10% terror. It's that when that phone rings, you have to be ready, and you have to do it right, so.
Now, the dispatch metrics show the number of calls that came in, but don't give us an indication of how many of those went to fire, ambulance, or police. Would it be possible to see that? In part, I'd love to know, I know we talk about jail diversion, and the clinical social workers can do a different sort of help. It'd be great to see where those benefits are falling out.
That, I would assume that could be pulled from the system we have. I don't have that available, but I assume we could provide that.
I just know anecdotally, reading in the news, that they're finding more of a benefit for adding clinical social workers to help people than just having more police on the street, because you can avoid long-term costs for people going to prison where that's not really the right way to help them. So I'd love to know how that's playing out.
I can tell you that we typically, when we dispatch fire to anything, the police department goes as well. So it would be part of the same incident.
Okay.
So I wouldn't think the numbers vary too much, but we typically go to most responses the fire department has.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Jason, go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, the first question is a direct follow-up to what Christy just said. I believe you said that you have one clinical response officer, but it looks like in the budget book, you have budget for two. Is that, am I reading that right? And are you just waiting to find the right candidate? Or, and corollary, is it two the right number, or should it be three or four?
I think to answer the first part of the question, we are seeking someone. We have not found the right person for that role at this point. And, maybe down the road, 3 or 4 would be an appropriate number. I think also many of the responders we have wouldn't be appropriate to handle or to respond by themselves to a call, or wouldn't even want to. And I think that may be part of what keeps people away from applying. They don't want to be put into situations where they're responding as a police officer or to replace a police officer. I think the proper response to many of these calls is to have the police come in, make sure the area is safe, and then have someone come in and help de-escalate or diffuse the situation and provide appropriate direction to the person that needs it to get the help that they need.
Okay. I have 2 other comments. One, just in the hopes that lots of people are watching this budget meeting with rapt attention because it's such an interesting year. Where is the right place to go to get the very nice, professional, small, square Narcan kits? I do know one resident in town who first went to the Health and Human Services Department and was sent somewhere else, and then ended up back at Town Hall. So since as a public service, where is the right place to go in town to get the Narcan kits that you attributed to a decrease in the overdose calls from the previous year?
I believe they're available through the health department, but we also have availability to provide them.
Yeah, so I think the police department, as a matter of course, has them and distributes them to people that they're interacting with, but we downstairs in the land use health department have a big box of them. And you can come in and you just have to be trained. It takes 2 minutes and then you can have them there. So we're open.
Town hall land use department.
Yep.
That's the message I want disseminated. Thank you very much. And then my last question, and I realize this is a subjective question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Would it be a clear and present danger to the citizenry of the town if the police car replacement program was extended by a year or two?
Difficult to answer that question. I think having good equipment available for people to respond, especially when they're responding to emergencies at a high rate of speed, it's a much more safe environment to have newer equipment. Some of the vehicles we're operating have more than 80,000 miles, and I don't think that that is as safe as having a newer vehicle that is,
Is there a national standard that you can point to? Because I realize while newer is better, we're headed into very difficult times. And while I do not want to put the citizenry in clear and present danger, if there is one more year that we can squeeze out of a car or two.
I think it would be safer to provide, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think it would be safer to provide the vehicles and not take that risk. I'm not comfortable recommending that we extend it.
I agree with you, it's safer, but I would like some hard data to back it up.
Okay.
Thanks for the statement and the question, Jason.
Thanks, Chief Cogan. My son attended the camp at NARA, as you know, saw you
Yes.
that day. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Said originally he didn't want to go. So I thought that was great, and it's great to do that. Hopefully you'll be continuing that this year. My dispatch question was answered, but I hope that when you're looking at replacing vehicles, that you replace that F-150 with one of the hybrid ones to save on fuel. Electric and the pickup truck's just not there yet. So hopefully that will be in the future. But also one point on a police cruiser, they're running 24/7. And also recently we had a call 911 4 times from my mother-in-law. Have the ambulance sent, had to take her to Emerson. Police were always there. Everybody was professional. And it was much appreciated.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, you can tell it's getting late because when you said cone with a cop, I thought you said comb with a cop, and I thought that was both odd and ironic. But putting that aside.
That's why we put the picture in there.
Yeah, that's good, that's good. Are you seeing any change in younger officers or people just out of training or police academy where their expanded ability to handle mental health issues? Do you see more training from your younger recruits in that department than you would have seen 5, 10, 15 years ago?
Absolutely. There's a much greater focus on that for academies, as well as a program that it's called CIT that we send almost 90+% of our officers, including myself and the deputy, have attended to the 40-hour training, and it deals specifically with mental health response.
Okay. Showing my age, you said CIT, and I just thought of the movie Police Academy, which I'm sure it's not anything like that.
Crisis intervention training.
I have a clarification that I just want to make. The first 3 questions on our 108 question list have to do with the clinical responder. And, you know, we have a grant, it's running out, but then question 104, the answer is we've added a general fund budgeted position. Is it true that that's not an additional FTE, that FTE was just shifted from an officer to the clinical responder. So it's not actually an additional FTE, even though it's an additional second clinical responder position.
Yeah, that's an example of where we look at services that we need going forward that we may not need going backwards. So we had 33 patrol officers.
Yeah.
And now we have 32. And the 33rd is now, well, it's vacant, but we're trying to have it be a clinician. The chief would rather have 33 patrol officers and 2 clinicians, I guarantee it. And he doesn't let me forget that. But that's what we did. It's just another example of where we're doing that. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly. I also want to talk a little bit about the recruiting. I've noticed that the forces, the department, is diversifying. And I'm wondering, because one of the answers for another question, I don't remember what number, was that we try and use free resources for advertising job positions to keep that budget down, social media and whatnot. So are the recruitment efforts different? And if they are, do they cost more? And then the second part of that is, anecdotally, are you seeing a difference in community response because of that diversification?
There's no real difference in cost for the way we're recruiting. And I can't give you a good explanation as to why we've seen an increase in diversity. But I can tell you that it seems to have caused more, or it's growing. It feels as though it's attracting more diversity, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also, it could be that there's a more diverse pool of folks going into this career. The only other thing that I wanted to say was that the data results following the hiring of the clinical responder are really encouraging. And that's about it. So, thank you both.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to say, we've been very intentional with trying to recruit more diverse candidates for every department, and I think the police department is a great example of where the community is noticing it. So, thanks for bringing that up as well.
I know there's a long lead time on getting fire trucks. Is there similar lead time in getting police vehicles?
No, they're much more readily available than a fire truck, yeah. 3 years is a long time to wait for a vehicle. I'm glad we don't have to wait.
Is the increased number of traffic stops this year versus last year, is that due to an increased enforcement on your part, worse drivers in the community?
I think it's deliberate. We are certainly assigning it for each shift. There's an expectation that traffic enforcement be part of the routine, and I think it shows, and it has a positive effect on the behavior of our motorists.
Yeah, I know anecdotally from residents who speak to me, people are worried about crossing Main Street, even in a crosswalk, and people not slowing down for them or whatever. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy?
Happy to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
Okay, well, I think that's a good one to end on. Nice job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I'm pretty impressed with all the information that was just presented by the department heads here. So, I look forward to doing it again tomorrow night, and thank you for all the thoughtful questions. If there's things that you think of when on your ride home or your walk home, feel free to reach out to me in the morning, and we can try to produce additional answers tomorrow night when we come back here at 6 p.m. Any other, sorry, I guess.
No,
this is your
just,
part.
thank you. I agree. This was, I always worry that these kind of meetings are going to be awful and boring, and instead they're compelling and interesting, and I learn things, and I, get to meet people. So it's all good. Even in the context of the difficult decisions we're facing, at least I felt like we also got good information and discussion started about, some of the challenging questions we face. Unless there's any other closing comments, I'd be happy to close out the select board meeting.
Scott has to go first.
Okay.
Do we leave it open because it's 2 nights? Do we
Uh,
have
no.
a separate agenda for the second night?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
thank
we're
you.
posted for both nights. So if you want to close out your meeting, then we will close out our meeting.
I motion to adjourn the finance committee meeting.
Second.
We need to do ours as a roll call with Jason remote, so Scott,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Christine,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Roland,
Aye.
Jason.
Aye, thank you.
I say aye.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Similar motion from the select board, would be happy
I
to
move
entertain.
to adjourn.
Okay, Alyssa has moved and David has seconded. All those in favor, please say yes or aye.
Aye.
Yeah, that's all of us. We're out of here.
Sorry, I was late.
Well, it worked out. Yeah. Everything okay?
Yes, no, just.
Good. Just the shock of.
Press